Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of council. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest?
Through you, Your Worship. Through you, Your Worship. I have three particular interests that that one was on the confidential report CAO-02-18 dated June 25th in the closed session in 2018. And the other two are 10-4 report LLS-38-18 dated July 5th, 2018, and report 10-5 report PLA-13-18 dated July 5th, 2018, all because of property ownership.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else from council? First of all, I apologize for everybody having to sit here for an extra half an hour. Sometimes our deliberations and closed sessions go a little bit longer than we anticipate them to, but it's always good, healthy debate, just so you know. But thank you very much for your patience tonight. Look to council for the approval of the minutes held, special closed meeting held June 25th. Mover and seconder, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor and carried. And then the same thing for the council meeting held June 25th. Councillor Dunn, Councillor Jacobs, discussion on the motion. All in favor and carried. Is there any business arising out of those minutes? Seeing none, so then we move on to reports of staff and delegations. So this evening we have a delegation from the North Shore Lake Erie Community Association, NSLECA, presentation of the application submission to the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. Do we have a spokesperson? Are you presenting, or are we just, yes, you are? Okay. So as normal, we've had an opportunity, please step forward, had an opportunity to review your submission. But delegations always have 5 minutes to address council, and we take it from there. So just in front of you, there's a microphone. Press the talk button, introduce yourself, and away we go.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing us to present our journey to you today.
Yep, it's on.
Oh. I'd like to introduce my team. Steve Longtoy is the president of our North Shore Lake Erie Community Association, and the team members in this DMAF program that we were pursuing is Phil Heil from East Beach and Andy Lodge from Maritet Beach. I'd like to take a second before I get started to thank Lucy Jackson for squeezing us into the agenda tonight, and I hope you've got the changes I sent to you, because we've had a major setback in our pursuit of that DMAF. And also to Luann Maritet for her quick actions on getting down to our area and fixing some drain issues that we had. And the Public Works Department, of course, for the great job that they did during the disaster of April the 14th and the 15th. So, as we all know, we face it every day with climate change. We on the lake probably know more about climate change than everybody else. We're relentless. We're facing relentless east and northeast winds, almost on a daily basis now. I've lived on the lake for 50 years. I've never seen anything like it. Is it climate change? Something has changed. And the winds are getting stronger. We've had that storm of April the 14th and 15th, and that caused about $1.2 million worth of damage just to the shoreline from Pulley Road to Elmdale. Unfortunately, we didn't have that information available to the mayor at the time that it was requested. But so after that storm hit and everybody started rebuilding their lives, we formed this North Shore Lake Erie Association. We've only been going 2 months, and we've been in feet don't fill me mode ever since. Once we got going, we were in contact with Rick Nichols and most of the excuse me, Mr. Van Kesteren and even Doug Ford. We spoke with him. trying to see if we could get some support for shoreline protection. Shortly after we got formed, our group, Mr. Van Kesteren alerted us to this DMAF function. So we dug our heels in and started working on that immediately. They told us that the chances were pretty slim that we could qualify, but we dug in. And this team pulled together and put together all that information that I've given you. And I'd like for you to save that information because a lot of hard work went into that. I'd like you to file it and keep it for someday if there's some funding that comes available or some ray of hope, we can go back to that and use that as a base for it. So we worked on that DMFA program for about a month. And we made a call to the DMAF agency and found out that it was only provide funds to shorelines that were public lands, and we therefore would not qualify. So that was really took the wind out of our sails. We were back to square one. So now what we're attempting to do is appeal to the council to sit down and see if we can get together as a group and form some sort of coalition, yourselves and ourselves, to discuss and find ways for us to go forward with shoreline protection, whether it's at the municipal level, whether it's at the provincial level, whether it's at the federal level. We all need to kind of work together. So I would like to present a motion, if I may. Is that something I can do?
Probably not, because you're not an elected official. But
Oh.
you can certainly submit a request for council consideration. How's that?
That sounds fine. I would like to I'd like, first of all, for you to we have formed a secondary group now because of this DMAF. We've got this liaison group that's going to be coordinating the efforts for every community from Erie Beach in Chatham-Kent all the way to Feely Island, and any other community that needs to join in this effort. It's open.
Okay.
But first of all, I'd like to you to recognize that we are a legitimate group and that we are going, and I'd like us to work together going forward. And see if we can, is there some committee or some agency within the town of Leamington that we could work with on a regular basis, keep a dialogue going on these efforts?
Off the top of my head, I would say no, there's no such grouping. I think that's what council is really here for. But Mr. Neufeld, any suggestions or ideas?
We have issues, not exactly like this. Obviously, this is large and quite unique. But when we have issues of an infrastructure nature, generally our Director of Infrastructure, Rob Sharon, is the key point for the municipality. And without creating, if it's council's wishes, that is likely the easiest and most direct way for there to be continued dialogue with the municipality is through our Director of Infrastructure, Rob. And he may not always be the one who gets back to you, but for example, Public Works and the Drainage Department both report through managers through to Rob. So okay. That is likely the best way. Rather than going the route of a particular committee or a committee of council, it's likely, I would suggest that the best way is to establish Rob as our key point person, and maybe even Rob can expand on that just for a moment.
Your Worship. Certainly Certainly. That's what we could establish, is that we can exchange information, contact information. We can let the group know from a municipal perspective what we're looking into. There is another federal program that we plan to bring a report forward to council this summer. It's called the National Disaster Mitigation Program. It's not necessarily about infrastructure investment right now, because that's not how that particular program works. This is more about understanding, going through risk analysis to determine what are the risks and what are the flood hazard areas, and approaching it that way as a start. So council will see the report coming this summer. It's a 50-50 cost sharing between the federal government, so there are a lot of other things to consider as well. But we are looking at that program specifically for this area, so certainly we can explore that. And a number of, just open dialogue between the association and us, and if you have questions, we're happy to answer them or to meet and discuss specific issues.
Okay.
That's all we need is a...
That's your point of contact, right?
Fine.
Yeah.
That's,
I will tell you, though, I mean, as we talked about in our meeting in Town Hall last month, whenever it was that we did that, I have regularly asked for shoreline protection funding to be put in place. And as I said to you, it's nice now to hear our neighbors saying the same things. I know Pelee Island has been after it forever and ever and ever. And that voice is getting a little bit louder, I think, from the mayor's standpoint. And even at our last Great Lake Mayor's Conference, Mayor Hope was becoming much more verbal on it as well, because he's usually losing a lot of, roadway. I mean, the cliffs are falling in and the road's disappearing. Highway 3, the old highway, Talbot Trail, whatever it is called nowadays. So I know we are going to the AMO conference coming up in August. You're allowed to apply to meet with 3 different ministers. We're trying a tactic to maybe get in front of more than that, and one of the keys will be, and I forget which one it's going to be, whether it's MNRF, to talk to them about the shoreline protection. And if that happens, I've already spoken with the various mayors, Pelee Island. They're already on board, ready to all of us go in together and present our case. And again, you are feeling the same frustration that we feel on a regular basis, whether it's myself, members of council, our CAO, our director, where they dangle that carrot in front of your face and then they just give you one of these because, it's not really meant for that, Yeah. So we know where you're coming from. We understand your situation, obviously. But the funding side of things is always the hardest part. And so we'll continue. We'll continue to try. And so now you have Mr. Sharon's as your contact person, and hopefully something positive will come out of this. Questions from council? Councilor Verbeke?
Trying to put names to faces here. I've got Steve, Andy, and Phil. I'd like to know who did the speaking tonight.
I'm sorry. My name is Wayne King. I live on Pulley Road. I've lived there for 50 years. Apologize for that.
Okay. No other questions from council? All right. Actually, I found your report really cool. Very, very good.
Thank you.
And some really good information. So I know staff will keep that on hand, and council's had the opportunity to read it. So anyway, thank you very, very much. And we'll see where we can go from here.
Thank you very kindly.
Councilor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. This report, I don't recall having a copy of that. Will it be distributed to us, or do we already have one? It came up by email?
Yes.
I got to double check that, because I don't recall seeing it.
Yeah.
We'll get it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks very much. All right, we'll move on to the next report, which is the audited financial statements. Ms. Roach?
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. It's my pleasure to report the 2017 draft audited financial statements for the municipality. Ashley Meyer, the municipality's audit partner from Hicks, McPherson, Iotona, and Dreger, is here this evening, should council have any questions. So the audited financial statements will become final once approved by this council. The auditors were on site to complete the interim work in November, and the final work was completed in May and June of 2018. In accordance with the Municipal Act, the financial affairs of the municipality are required to be submitted annually to the ministry. The Act also outlines the requirement to have the financial statements available for the public. These financial statements are presented following PSAB, which is Public Sector Accounting Board standards, which is different than the way we prepare for budgets, as they are done on a cash basis. Under PSAB, depreciation is calculated on all municipal capital assets, as well as post-employment benefits and landfill closure and post-closure costs are calculated. Leamington's share of the ownership in the Essex Power Corporation and Union Water are included as part of the audited financial statements, in addition to all the boards under the municipality's control, such as the Police Services Board, the BIA, and the Joint Animal Control Board. So there are four important financial statements included in the audited statements, and they are the consolidated statement of financial position, which is the balance sheet. It reflects all of the financial assets, liabilities, and accumulated surplus for the municipality, and the notes to the financial statement support many of these balances. The consolidated statement of financial operation presents a summary of the municipality's revenues and expenditures for the fiscal year. The statement of change in the net financial assets is a statement that provides the reconciliation of the annual surplus to the change in the net financial assets. And finally, the statement of cash flows provides an analysis of the changes to the municipality's cash position for the year when incorporating the operations, asset purchases, and debt payments. The 2017 fiscal year end had accumulated net surplus position of approximately $286.7 million, which is an increase of $17.8 million over prior years. The major changes in this surplus are the capital assets, which increased by $7.4 million, and these are ongoing projects at the end of the year, so we consider them work in progress. The windup of the development charges was about $5.7 million, which is recategorized to the operating surplus. There was increased grant funding and a reduction in the percentage of debt related to Union Water as updated with the ownership changes as of January 1st of 2017. Additional variances are outlined on page 5 of the report as well. The preparation of the financial statements is truly a team effort. The finance team works tirelessly to make sure that these are accurately reflect the position of the municipality. So for all their hard work, and they're not here this evening, they're at home, but I would like to thank them. So once again, this year, the auditors have provided an audit opinion indicating that the 2017 financial statements are fairly presented. So therefore, the recommendation before council this evening is that the 2017 audited consolidated financial statements for the corporation of the municipality of Leamington be approved, that administration be authorized to publish the 2017 audited consolidated financial statements on the municipality's website, and Hicks, McPherson, Iotona, and Dreger LLP be appointed as the external auditors for the corporation of the municipality of Leamington for the fiscal 2018. Thank you.
Okay. Questions from council? Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. I would just like to say a great job, not only to accounting, but to administration as well, with the direction of council. But I mean, we're quite healthy in our community, and it's good to see. So thank you to all. Great job. Make us look good up here. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn?
Through you, Your Worship. Laura, I just have one question, and you may have explained it before, but in the sick leave benefit plan, and how you stated in here that it's on page 40 or 15 in yours, that it's estimated for 2017 to be about 208,000, and in 2016 was zero. Just a little more explanation.
Through you, Mayor Patterson. So this is something that we had our actuary look at this year. It is something that's new for this municipality. And as you are aware, our sick leave policy is not that it is vested. So what that means is it's like an insurance plan, let's say, right? So if it's there if you need it, but you lose it if you don't use it. So what this amount or provision is for, I mean, I do want to say this is non-cash, so this is all just an accrual accounting. But what this represents is sick leave time that has been taken in excess of that was earned in the year. So these are, this is an extra expense that we incur every year that is not earned, because we earn, the municipality staff earn 10.5 hours per month of sick time. So this is based on usage, and it is expected that we will incur an additional $200,000 approximately, based on our current trending of sick time in future periods.
Okay, so we have 3 recommendations before us to approve the report, to post it on our website, and to appoint the auditors. Moved by Councillor Jacobs, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on that motion? All in favor? And carried. Next report is one regarding the purchase of two-way radio and GPS tracking system. Mr. Del Ciencio.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, members of council. Bringing this report forward to authorize the purchase of a new two-way radio and GPS or vehicle GPS tracking systems. So a project team was formed with representatives from the affected departments, Public Works, Water, and Recreation. And the team collaborated to define the scope of the project and assist with the evaluation of the proposals. Administration recommends a refresh cycle of no more than 5 years for this type of equipment, and the current equipment is over 4 years at this point for most of the departments, and for the Recreation Department it's over 10 years old. The current GPS vehicle tracking solution that is current is no longer reliable and very limited in its scope, and therefore the upgrades are required. As this is specialized equipment with a limited number of suppliers, an RFP, request for proposal, was issued, requesting pricing for both radio communications and vehicle GPS tracking. 3 vendors submitted proposals for the two-way radio system, and 6 submitted proposals for GPS vehicle tracking. The RFP closed on June 15th, and administration assessed the solution requirements for the radios and tracking department needs, and included handhelds, in-vehicle radios, as well as smartphone communications on this solution. We requested pricing for both 3 years and 5 years to see where the pricing would lie. We decided to bundle these separate solutions in one RFP to hope to gain bundled pricing and discounted pricing within these solutions. Submissions were evaluated based on the following criteria. So organizational information and vendor history, one component, project portfolio or previously implemented solutions similar to this one, 10% of the rating. Overall solution proposed was rated at 35%, financial and timing 25, and then support and warranty was 10. So the main focus of the evaluation committee was to rate the level of background and experience each proponent had with the development of two-way radios and GPS solutions, the overall solution provided on the proponent's submission, whether it met or exceeded our requirements, past projects that were similar to the scope of this one, the pricing provided for each and the associated budget impact, the timeline to deploy, and the overall warranty and solution. At the conclusion of this process, Sky Mobile was chosen as the preferred proponent, as their proposals scored the highest for both solutions. And incidentally, it was the cheapest solution, providing all new hardware to the municipality. Administration recommends disposal of our surplus equipment to Sky Mobile to obtain trade-in credits on the new hardware for the radio systems. So based on some estimated quantities, the project costs for these two solutions are as follows, or outlined in the chart there, and I've put the budget impact for each there. These costs, as outlined here, reflect an increase to the approved 2018 operating budgets for Public Works and Water on the GPS vehicle tracking. There's no impact on the radio side. And it's an increase to the Recreation Department for radio communications. So the recommendation for this is we're looking for council to authorize the purchase of a new two-way radio and GPS vehicle tracking systems from Sky Mobile. Administration be authorized to trade in the existing radio equipment to obtain price credits for the new hardware, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute this agreement.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Worship. Dave, in regards to the way that you evaluated the proposals, can you give me some, the first one there, level of background experience each proponent had with the deployment of two-way radios? So I'm assuming you looked at, were they involved with other municipalities that have done projects of this scope? Was there any with the successful bidder here?
Yeah, that's exactly how we rated them. How long were they in the industry? What other projects that they have done similar to ours? If they've had existing deployments with other municipalities. So all that was taken into account and rated accordingly.
Is there any
for each.
municipalities you can use for an example there close by?
This vendor it's somebody who left from a previous company years back, formed his new one. These guys deploy radios and GPS to all of WDS. They've got Amoco. They're big in the construction side, and they're
Gotcha.
just getting their foot in the door with municipalities.
All right. And my second question is there any other devices being used for communication amongst these departments? Like, are they also using phones, let's say? Is there phones in those departments as well?
For some of the staff, yes, they're multi-device. So what we're looking at, or what was part of the proposal is if an existing staff member already had a device, like a smartphone, rather than carry a second device, a radio, we were looking at potentially putting just a app on the phone to be able to communicate on that network, so you're not carrying multiple devices. We were looking at mitigating some costs and whatnot. And then for the other staff that no longer need to communicate on radios, we were just pushing them over to smartphones. So it's a department requirement, whatever they want to go to. I know for the Public Works Department, for example, the majority of the staff do not have smartphones or municipally issued smartphones. So their primary communication is radio.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things, Dave. So every vehicle in Public Works will have GPS as well as water?
Yes, that's correct. Currently, right now, existing, that's what we had right now for GPS tracking. So the same will be there for all the fleet. The potential is to add in any municipal vehicle down the road, but for now, we're just concentrating on those two departments for GPS.
Okay, thank you. Further to that, if I may. So you talk in the last paragraph about an increase to the approved 2018 operating budgets for Public Works, Water, and Recreation. Do you have figures what those increases are like?
So on the GPS side, we currently pay $10 a month per device for Public Works and Water. So that is now changing to $25 per month per device. So there's that impact for Public Works and Water. And for Recreation, there was no budget set aside for them in 2018. They initially anticipated using their existing system for this year and then pushing it to 2019, but there was a couple of health and safety concerns in the aging of their equipment. So So their impact is they didn't have anything, so that's the $25 a month per device over there.
Thank you. And then you don't have a total amount. You don't know what the total is for their budgets.
Well, recreation, the $375 a month that I detail out there
Yeah.
will be the impact for the remainder of this year for all their devices. And then for the other two departments, for water, it's going to be approximately $150 a month for the remainder of the year for all of their
Extra?
device
Extra?
extra. And for public works, well, I can't do my math that fast, but 15 times 35.
Okay. Ballpark, I got it. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship. David, further to Councillor Wilkinson's question about using apps on the smartphones, that will require less radios. Is that going to reduce the cost for us if we are less hardware?
So the cost that will be saved on the hardware is initially the upfront, which is technically zero right now with the trade-in. However, with the smartphone app, there's still a licensing fee that you pay. Still, your monthly fee is licensing. So initially, it's going to be tested out how that smartphone app works to communicate there, and then if all individuals still need it. So we're going to go through an assessment period to see if the total deployed radios will be still used or whatnot. But I think what we're only going to save is the handheld radios. What's in the vehicle, what's mounted in the vehicle, those will not change, and those will be consistent throughout. So we may have just a handful of less handheld radios out there. So there's not going to be a lot of savings, but there may be a little bit of savings in the future.
And further? You also mentioned you asked about a 3-year and a 5-year plan. Which is it that we chose, and did we get a better rate for a 5-year?
There was no pricing change for 5 years, so we're only going to commit to 3 years with the option to extend to 5-year to maintain the pricing. As there was no price difference in this solution in the winning proposal for 3 or 5, then we only want to commit to 3 years.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so Dave, my questions were similar to the others that in regard to the increase over budgeted amounts, but it really, if you do quick math, it's not adding up to an onerous amount of money in any of the departments. So I'm assuming they'll find that money within their own budgets and when we're covered. So what's the benefit? What's the benefit to you, to council, to administration, and to the taxpayer by upgrading to these systems?
I think the huge benefit is felt on the GPS side. The current system became inadequate over the last few years, and it wasn't capturing the required data that we needed to capture and we anticipated it to capture. So we went from a solution that would track vehicles potentially every 15 to 30 seconds. In terms of where the vehicle's at and whether it was capturing data like plow up, plow down, salt on, salt off, stuff like that. We're now going to a system that is off the radio network, is on a cellular network, which will provide us more accurate data, because we were finding that everything attached to the old radio network wasn't. There'd be huge gaps in the data, and we would have, when we were looking up for insurance claims, when we were looking up to provide data, we would have gaps in, okay, well, we lost where this vehicle was in this, time period. So we're going to 1-second intervals to capture the data. So that is already a huge benefit. It's on a separate network other than the radio, so there's no interference on it. As well, we're now able to capture additional information like gas mileage, idling time, hard brakes, too quick of acceleration, whether vehicles are speeding or going over the set limit on the roads. So we're gathering much more information that we can use for insurance purposes as well as health and safety purposes for the staff.
Okay, so from the administrative point of view, this is really going to be good for multiple reasons you just mentioned, and from all those of us sitting up here who often get the phone calls, we'll now be able to get a hold of you and say, yeah, actually the snowplow was there, and it was here at this time, and so on and so forth. So
Yes.
that's a win-win all the way around for everybody. Okay.
Yeah,
Very
for
good.
sure.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we do have recommendation. Councillor Jacobs, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Worship. Just out of curiosity, our radio system that you have here, is there like a base unit that you dispatch with, or is this just communications between staff members? I'm just curious about the radio's process.
So no, we've done away with the base station in the last deployment, so we no longer have that. So it's basically, you'll have interdepartmental communications. So you'll have a separate talk channel for communications between the department, and then we'll have shared channels programmed so that Public Works can speak to water and can speak to recreation if needed. And the hopes is we look at integrating or being able to have a talk path to the fire department shortly, so you can have all municipal departments to be able to speak on a common channel, as well as to be able to speak on their own private channel for the departments.
So this would work perfectly into disaster planning type thing as well. Very
Correct.
good. Thank you.
Correct.
Councillor Verbicki?
We need it. I'll move it. Thank you.
Support by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Thanks. Next report up is the one regarding the sanitary sewage pumping station, and Ms. Orton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll see in the report that we're referencing the Bevel Village subdivision agreement, which will be coming up, I think, right after my presentation of this report. So the Bevel Village owner, which is the numbered company identified in the report, is the owner of approximately 22 acres located on the south side of Bevel Line Road. The Bevel Village owner intends to develop the lands into a residential subdivision. Gulfwood Lakes, Inc. Owns lands to the southeast, and that's also to be developed as a residential subdivision. Carl Grossi is the principal of Gulfwood Lakes, Inc., and is prepared to assume the obligations under the sewer agreement that I'm discussing within this report. It is intended that the municipality also sign the sewer agreement because the municipality would eventually accept the sewer infrastructure, and Legal and Legislative Services has been involved in drafting the sewer agreement. The municipality determined that the most appropriate means of accessing the municipal sanitary sewer is for the sewage from both the Gulfwood lands to proceed through an oversized gravity sanitary sewer along Heron Street, which is part of the Bevel Village lands, to a pumping station also located on the Bevel Village lands, and then ultimately to the municipal sewer. This plan is preferable to both Bevel Village lands and Gulfwood lands, then separately accessing the municipal sewer. The Bevel Village owner and Mr. Grossi would share the cost of construction. The municipality does not pay any of those costs. The following provisions of the sewer agreement directly affect the municipality. The work must be done to the municipality's satisfaction. The costs of satisfying the municipality in relation to the sewer agreement, including testing and inspection, are borne by Mr. Grossi and the Bevel Village owner equally. The municipality may require either then to perform additional works to address specific issues that are raised by the municipality. They would both sign future agreements as the municipality may reasonably require to facilitate the construction. Upon completion and acceptance, the pump station shall be conveyed to the municipality. Mr. Grassi and Bevel Village would indemnify the municipality against any claims until the municipality accepts the work. Mr. Grassi and Bevel Village would maintain the works until the municipality accepts them, which do not occur prior to completion. There were some previous versions of the sewer agreement, and Gulfwood Lakes, Inc. was originally a party. We have changed that to accommodate the request of Mr. Grassi and Gulfwood Lakes, as well as Bevel Village. The change leads to some concerns that are outlined in the report. If there's any indication that Mr. Grassi would not fulfill the obligations, that should be borne by Gulfwood Lakes, Inc. If there is an expectation from Mr. Grassi that the municipality would collect costs he incurred from Gulfwood Lakes, Inc. when the Gulfwood lands are developed, and if there's an expectation that Gulfwood Lakes, Inc., when it develops the lands, would seek access to the municipal sewer by another route. These concerns are not reasons for the municipality to refuse to sign the sewer agreement, but they just should be borne in mind for the future developments. So the recommendation is that council authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the sewer agreement between 2298764 Ontario Limited, Carl Grassi, and the municipality with respect to the construction of a sanitary sewer pump station, gravity sewer, and sewer force main.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Ruth. Going back to the last page here of the report on page 57, that first one is that, well, Ed was the author of this originally. He's put down that first point there. If there is any indication that Grassi will not fulfill the obligations, that should be borne by Gulfwood Lakes Incorporated. What options do we have available to us if that were to ring true in the future?
Well, the agreement is with Mr. Grassi, so any enforcement of the agreement would be by Mr. Grassi, who is an individual, and he is not the owner of the lands, but he is one of the principals of the owner of the lands. So hopefully that would not come to fruition. It's always more preferable to actually have the owner of the lands as a signatory to an agreement that affects them. So it's not a major concern for the municipality. It's just something that should be kept in mind. It's, as I indicated, not a reason not to sign the agreement, just something that could happen, and those enforcement steps might need to be taken.
Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. That's along the same lines that I was asking as Councillor Wilkinson had. I guess if Mr. Grassi defaults, then we go back to Gulfwood Estates to pick it up. Is that correct?
If Gulfwood Lakes wished to develop and Mr. Grassi had not fulfilled the obligations under the agreement, really it would be Bevel Village that would be looking for Mr. Grassi to complete what he indicated he would say. And if Gulfwood Lakes wished to develop, we would have to deal with Gulfwood Lakes at that point. There would be some hindrance to their development.
Okay, recommendation moved by Councillor Jacobs. Support? Councillor Wilkinson? Discussion on the motion? All in favor? And carried. Thank you. Next one is the report regarding the zoning bylaw amendment and the Bevel Line Road, and Ms. Yablonsky.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an application for subdivision approval and a zoning bylaw amendment for the proposed Bevel Line Village subdivision. This is a subdivision that's proposed to contain 191 single-detached, semi-detached, and townhouse dwelling units. The subject lands are located at 447 Bevel Line Road, and this location is south of Seacliff Drive. A rezoning amendment has also been requested for this same property, and it has been processed simultaneously with the subdivision application. The proposed rezoning will create a site-specific zone that will apply specifically to the Bevel Line Village subdivision lands. The subject property has a lot area of 9.139 hectares, which is 22.582 acres. The north part of the subdivision, excepting a portion of land along Bayview Park, which is on the west side, will be comprised of 4-unit townhouse dwellings, while the lots in the south part of the subdivision, south of Medina and Destiny Drives, will comprise single detached dwellings. The middle section of lots will be occupied by semi-detached dwellings, all of which will be freehold in ownership. The Beveline Village subdivision will connect through to future phases of the Destiny Estates and Gulfwood Lakes subdivisions. Beveline Village is proposed to be constructed in 3 phases, starting at the north end. Access to the first phase will be by way of Beveline Road. The servicing details will be incorporated into the subdivision agreement to ensure that the subdivision is constructed in accordance with our Development Standards Manual. Under the Planning Act, plans of subdivision are submitted to the County of Essex for approval. The county has been delegated approval authority by the province for subdivision applications as well as for condominium applications. The county has deemed this application to be complete, and they requested that that the municipality of Leamington circulate the application and also give public notice and hold the statutory public meeting. Prior to the required public meeting, a public open house was held on April 11th here at the municipal building. This provided people with an opportunity to come and ask any questions or express any comments that they may have had on the applications. There were 3 individuals that attended that meeting. They were all in attendance just to gather additional information. There were no objections from any of them. The statutory public meeting of council was then held on April 23rd. Here, it was a meeting of council. There were no responses received as a result of the public notice, and there was no one in attendance at the public meeting, excuse me, to speak to council other than the applicant and his consultant, Jackie Lasseline. Once the municipality provides comments to the county will then issue a decision to either approve or refuse in draft form the subdivision. There's a 20-day appeal period after the draft approval has been issued, and just like with a rezoning application or an official plan amendment, that 20-day period allows for any concerns to come in the form of an appeal that's being filed. The developer is allowed to start construction of roads and services once they've entered into a subdivision agreement with the municipality, as well as final approval has been issued by the county, and the subdivision has been registered. The subdivision agreement will contain a number of standard requirements. This ranges from the provision of boulevard trees, payment of the necessary fees, such as for parkland dedication, the securities for performance and maintenance to make sure that the roads and anything else that would be taken over by the municipality is done properly. Also make sure that the utilities and things like street lighting are provided to full municipal standard. These things are all incorporated into the subdivision agreement, which will be back before council for approval in the near future. Sidewalks are going to be provided within the subdivision, and this will also include a walkway that will connect the development to Bayview Park, which is the regional park located to the immediate west, and it also has an off-leash section for dogs, or will have. Fencing will be incorporated into the agreement as well, and that will be provided around the perimeter of the subdivision to provide for buffering from adjacent uses. The neighboring church property on Beveline Road will have access through to Beveline Village subdivision. This was negotiated at the time there was a sale in land from the church to the subdivision owner. The exact location of the driveway has not yet been established, but we do know it will be within Block 84, which is in the northeast corner of the subdivision. While there were no comments received from the public during the circulation of public notice, we did get comments back from the various agencies and municipal departments at the time we circulated the application. Comments came back from the school boards, IRCA, our engineering department, and Canada Post. All of these were standard requirements for subdivisions. At the public meeting, there were some comments or questions raised by members of council, such as, will there be sidewalks within the proposed subdivision? And the response to that is that sidewalks will be on both sides of the streets in the north part of the subdivision and on one side of the street in the south part of the subdivision. A question also was raised by council at the public meeting, asking for more financial details for the sewer construction. Also, the question came up as to the width of Beveline Road and the capacity of the road for all traffic that could result from this subdivision. Engineering Services did provide a written response, which has been incorporated into the planning report. A separate response was also sent by email to members of council from Rob Sharon right after the public meeting. When we review these applications, we have to ensure that the policies of the provincial policy statement have been satisfied. In this situation, we have reviewed the application under the criteria that are established in the PPS and the Planning Act. It is my opinion that this subdivision satisfies all of the criteria and all of the policies in the PPS. In terms of the county official plan, the subject lands are located within the designated settlement area, which means they are appropriate for development subject to servicing. And I'm of the opinion that the proposed subdivision conforms to those policies as well. Our official plan designates this property residential and also indicates that this property is located within an area that's appropriate for growth. I am also of the opinion that our policies have been satisfied by this proposed subdivision. The property is zoned a holding residential zoned R3H under our zoning bylaw. The R3 zone permits single detached, semi-detached, converted, 2-unit, multiple and townhouse dwellings and uses that are accessory to those uses. The proposed subdivision will have 38 single detached dwellings, 28 semi-detached dwellings, and 125 townhouse dwelling units. All of these are uses that are permitted under the current R3 zoning. The holding category is in place to make sure that the lands are up to full municipal standards and fully serviced before any building permits can be issued. The holding symbol will have to be removed, and an application to remove that will be before council in the future at the appropriate time. The applicant, as I indicated previously, did submit an application to amend the zoning bylaw to create a site-specific zone. It will be an R3 zone, but it will reflect the proposed subdivision specifically. There are several provisions that they've asked for that are being proposed in the draft amending bylaw that's before you this evening. Firstly, we came to the agreement that staggered front yard setbacks would be appropriate in this location. They provide a more aesthetically pleasing street view. They also help to reduce the visual monotony that can come from uniform front yard setbacks and similar dwelling styles. They're also a traffic calming measure. The applicant's proposing a front yard setback of 6 meters up to 7 meters. This front yard setback will have to be staggered by at least 0.5 meters in order to encourage a 1 meter stagger instead of just half a meter. The neighboring dwelling unit would be able to have a 1 meter greater rear, or 1 meter less rear yard setback. So for example, if they provide a 7-meter front yard setback, they would then be able to have a 5-meter rear yard setback, which would allow them to have the same size building envelope as if they had a 6-meter front yard setback and a 6-meter rear yard setback. This is the first time we've done that, certainly since I've been here, and I'm not aware of any other subdivisions that we've dealt with that have these kind of provisions here in Leamington. In terms of lot frontage, there's one corner semi-detached lot that the applicant has requested a reduction in lot frontage. Normally, we require 24 meters. They're going to propose 21 meters, so it's a reduction of 3 meters. An interior lot would normally have 18 meters, so it's still going to be 3 meters larger than an interior lot. Next would be the increased lot coverage for covered rear yard decks and porches. We've been receiving a lot of applications for buildings that have these covered porches and covered rear decks. And in fact, we've had a number of applications before our Committee of Adjustment asking for an increase in lot coverage. In order to prevent those types of applications from coming forward, the applicant has requested that we incorporate that right into the amending zoning bylaw. And to do so, the maximum lot coverage is being requested to go up to 40% from 35% for single detached dwellings, up to 50% from 40% for semis, and up to 50% from 45% for the townhouse dwelling units. If it's an end townhouse dwelling unit, right now they are allowed to be 40% coverage, and it's going to be 50% for them as well. We've seen this trend in providing these covered rear yard porches and patios because of our aging population. People want to have a single-story dwelling, and they would like to have some space to enjoy that is somewhat outdoors. And these covered porches provide the solution for that. Lastly, the applicant is proposing that an open and unenclosed front porch be allowed to encroach into the required front yard. At present, we do not allow an open and unenclosed porch to be located in a required front yard. It could be in a front yard, but not the required setback for the front yard. We're suggesting that they should be allowed to project 1.2 meters by up to a total square footage of, 32.3 square feet, which is 3 square meters. And that would allow for some outdoor space in the front yard where it will help people keep an eye on their neighbors' properties, on their own properties, and it helps with socializing with neighbors as well. As specified under the Planning Act, we need to be meeting all of these requirements that we've gone through today. I'm of the opinion that all of these have been satisfied. They meet the criteria set out in the Planning Act. They're consistent with the policy statements under the Planning Act and provincial policy statement. They do not conflict with any applicable provincial plan or plans. And it's in keeping with the overall goals and policies of the county official plan and the municipality's official plan. There are a number of draft conditions of approval that we would like to see submitted to the county, and they pretty well all deal with servicing in some way or another. Most importantly, it would be that we want to see the applicant enter into a subdivision agreement with the municipality. Also, the subdivision agreement would have to cover all the issues that are dealt with from a financial basis, including things like development charges, provision of roads, installation of services, including sanitary sewage collection systems, water distribution systems, stormwater management facilities, and private utilities. The phasing and timing of the development should also be incorporated into the agreement. Stormwater management would be included in there. And also the requirement for the agreement that our legal department referred to in the report prior to this report, there will be reference to that as well. We want to make sure that all of these conditions are satisfied before the county issues their final approval of the subdivision. There are a number of other items that we'd like to see included as well, and those include the provision of the walkway, completion and implementation of traffic analysis, construction of a hard surface driveway for the church, installation of street lighting at the Bevel Line intersection, construction of roadside drainage along the south side of Bevel Line Road along the frontage of the development, construction of the storm outlet and overland flow route between the development and the Bevel Line drain, and lastly, improvements to the Bevel Line drain located west of the development. These last few that I've mentioned are all outside of the subject lands, but are required for this subdivision, and it is for that reason that we've requested that they be incorporated as draft conditions of approval to go to the county. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Councillor Wilkinson.
Just one, Your Worship. Heather, I heard you mention traffic calming measures somewhere in here, but I didn't see it in the report. Can you explain those to us, what's all involved for this subdivision in that regards?
Yes, through you, Your Worship. I mentioned that the staggered front yard depths and staggered rear yard depths will help to create a traffic calming measure. So when the houses are staggered a bit with different frontages, so they're not set in a straight line, that helps to create a little bit of a slowness in traffic because there's some visual change along both sides of the street.
Okay. For me, I'm a lover of covered decks. I mean, our house is all three sides of it is covered deck, but not enclosed. And when you're saying this, and I love the flexibility that you're bringing into this subdivision, the setbacks, the altered setbacks and everything, allowing a smaller backyard, all of it's great. And the front porch idea, great idea as well. For those who do the larger decks out back, covered and unenclosed, how do we know in years to come that they don't become all of a sudden a 3-season enclosed covered deck, and then shortly thereafter they become a addition to the house without really a building permit required?
Well, Your Worship, anytime anyone builds a structure, they are required to get a building permit as long as it exceeds 100 square feet in size. So I would expect that they would need a building permit if they were going to build such a structure after the fact. So if they start out with an open deck, they could come back and enclose the deck, but they would need to get permission from the municipality. And it would be at that time that the zoning would be checked and we would make sure that they would comply with the zoning bylaw. If they did it without permits and ended up getting complaints filed by a neighbor, then our bylaw enforcement group would be going out and asking them to bring it into compliance.
Okay. I only brought that up because I know it's happened elsewhere. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes. But the people who do get caught have had those enclosed, unenclosed at their cost. So I just want the public to be aware of it, but very, very supportive of this whole concept. Very, very good. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heather, looking at the draft subdivision plan figure 2, it looks to me like Eagle Street at the, I guess that'd be the west end, narrows considerably. Is that right? Just curious as to to Y, is that a traffic calming measure? Is that, see how narrow it gets?
Sorry, could you please repeat that?
Eagle Street
Eagle Street, yes?
at the west end where Destiny Drive is on my left. Seems to me that the road gets considerably narrower there, and as it goes around the cul-de-sac on both sides, and it's narrow again until Medina, and then it widens again. Is that correct? I just wondered if there's a purpose to that? No?
If through you, your worship, I believe there is a purpose to that. I know that there are sidewalks on both sides of the street on the north part, so that would be on the north part of Eagle Street. I'm thinking that it's possible that maybe only because it's at the one side of the southerly section that it's a bit narrower. It does look narrower. It might be a good question for our engineering department to answer. I see that Alan is here tonight. Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ms.
I think
Lassen?
it's an optical illusion, to be totally honest.
Okay, thank-
The intent is not to have it narrow. I'm not aware of any narrowing of the road, and yes, the sidewalk is going to be placed in accordance with the development manual. Yeah.
Alan, if you have additional? In your professional opinion.
I have to apologize. I didn't notice that till you pointed it out, and I was just looking at the road widths. I'd be speculating if I told you. I'd have to get back to you with the correct answer. But sometimes we do have a narrower right-of-way if we have a different road cross-section, whether it requires sidewalk on both sides or sidewalk on one side, whether we need to have utility easements on both sides or just one side. It's likely that we just have more happening in the north side of the subdivision versus the south side of the subdivision, but I can certainly get back to council with an answer for that.
I was just curious, I just wondered if the lot sizes changed. You know how we had that little bit of an issue on the south end of Antonio Court, so I'm a little bit buyer beware when it comes to that. Just curious, I mean, it's not, certainly isn't going to hinge on whether we approve this or not. I was just curious, and also because Councillor Wilkinson asked about the traffic calming, I wondered if that was an idea, was to make the street narrower to slow it down at that end. So it's really curiosity on my part.
We do have we have two standard right-of-way cross-sections in Leamington, so we could be using both in this subdivision depending on the road cross-sections.
Okay. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Your Worship. Along the deputy mayor's line there, though, Alan, like if it's reduced that much and it's going into pretty well almost like a cul-de-sac going around a corner type thing, is that going to hinder the process for fire trucks and snow plows and that, if they're in a street reduction, if that's what's actually taking place there?
I can tell you that we have looked at that, and that is not a problem. What you're seeing there is the property fabric. That's not the road fabric or the road width. That's just the property fabric. So the road widths are the correct width for what we need to do. The radii are correct to pass emergency vehicles through this subdivision.
Okay. All right. No further questions? Moved by, sorry? Pardon me? Oh, all right. I'm sorry. I thought they were just listed in case we had questions. So I didn't see it as a delegation. So Jackie, did you have something further to add, or?
Well, speaking to the deputy mayor's question, I have the plans out in front of me, and I don't think the intent is for it to be narrower. I believe the intent is the same width through the entire subdivision. I do have a quick and very brief presentation, if I may. I won't go into detail. Basically, I just wanted to indicate that the subdivision has been under discussion for over 12 years, almost 14. Very extensive studies and reviews on every aspect of the plan has been undertaken. Everything from traffic to a stage 4 archaeological study. You can see the study was undertaken really because it's an infilling subdivision that will be fit in between the Destiny Estates and the Gulfwood subdivision. There's many value-added features to this subdivision that I want to highlight. Heather has already spoken to, however, I do want to emphasize them. One being Block 48, the emergency access that's going to be provided. Block 86, which is a pedestrian access that's going to be provided to the new Bayview Park. Destiny Drive, there's going to be a vehicular access to the Bayview Park as well, for the cars to go down to the south. There's going to be a new church access on Block 84 that's being provided to the church, and as spoken about earlier, the new forced main pump station on Block 85. So what's our next step? We're here tonight because of 12 years of very cumulative hard work that's been undertaken to ask council's support to see this through to the County of Essex for draft plan approval. The county will issue draft plan approval with quite likely approximately 50 to 60 conditions, one of which will be the development agreement. That development agreement will then be negotiated and you will see it again. And it is at that stage that you will give sort of your final blessing to the plan. So today we're looking at support in principle to go forward to the county so we can begin satisfying the conditions imposed by the county and begin the negotiation of that draft agreement that we need. Thank you.
Okay, questions from council? None? Moved by Councillor Jacobs, supported by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor of that motion? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next report is one regarding the Mill Street West revitalization tender results. And Mr. Allen, Mr. Botham. And Alex, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked Alex to come and sit with me in case council has some detailed questions or questions about the particulars of the construction of the project. In September 2017, Leamington retained the services of R.C. Spencer Associates to prepare the Leamington Uptown Master Plan. They took a fresh look at traffic, infrastructure, public spaces, and parking needs in our uptown core in order to develop attractive and efficient choices for many people, including pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users, in concert with automobiles and convenient and accessible parking, and it all in support of the vision of our uptown area. Along with the preparation of the Uptown Master Plan, R.C. Spencer was also engaged to complete the engineering design of the sewer separation and road reconstruction of Mill Street West between Fox and Erie South. Mill Street West was intended to be the first street to incorporate or implement the Uptown Master Plan outcomes, knowing that the Uptown Master Plan outcomes and design and the Mill Street reconstruction outcomes and design would be developed concurrently. A proposed design of Mill Street West was presented to Council on March the 5th, 2018 by way of Engineering Report 0318, and we did include attached to this report attachments 1 and 2 that were also included in ENG 0318. And since that meeting, we have made some changes. You'll notice on attachment 1 that that's the same diagram we brought to council, but we had some discussion about changing the curb layout on the north side of the art gallery, and we did accommodate an extra parking space on that side, and we did also accommodate parking space off of Mill Street near the art gallery. So those changes were made, and they would be reflected in the final construction drawings. You'll also note further along in the report that the estimated cost to complete this work during the 2018 budget discussion is greater than what we anticipated. But we did note in ENG 0318 in our previous report that an area of concern regarding cost for this project was the separation of the combined sewer located in the alley that runs parallel to Mill Street east of Shotton Park. The extent of the work required within this alley was not known until more detailed engineering was completed. So in order to meet the construction deadlines and complete the works within the 2018 construction season, it was imperative to tender the works as soon as possible. R.C. Spencer was instructed to prepare the tender documents as soon as the final design was ready. So on June the 12th, 2018, the municipality closed and opened the 2 tenders that we did receive for this work from J.J. LaPera Infrastructure and Demore Construction. J.J. LaPera Infrastructure was the low tenderer. Again, the final extent of the proposed works, particularly sewer separation extents, architectural features, traffic features, streetscaping, were not confirmed until after the March 5th meeting of council. The construction works do cover a larger area than we anticipated during our budget discussions later in 2017. We particularly note in the next 2 or 3 paragraphs 3 areas: sewers, traffic infrastructure, and the landscaping and furniture that we'd like to see we're proposing to put on Mill Street. So with respect to the sewer system and the additional work there, it became apparent that there is a need to separate and reconstruct the sewer system in the alley, again, that's north of Mill Street and east of Shotton Park, to service the adjacent properties. The need is a result of some decisions that were made during the Talbot Street West and Erie Street South sewer construction project in 1988. A number of those properties were not provided with sewer service connections at the front of the buildings, and it would be difficult now to go back and provide connections to the sewers at the front and then replumb the buildings to the main streets. We do have an opportunity now to correct that, and the cost to do that through this tender is approximately $360,000. With respect to the intersection work that I talked about, particularly the Talbot-Albert Mill intersection, we're going to improve geometry there, add sidewalk and curbing, and some additions and upgrades to the traffic signal system. All these would be recommended through the Uptown Master Plan and were included in the tender documents. Some of the things that you'll see are accessible crosswalks and accessible signals, the tactile plates, some improvements around the Leamington Tomato and the Leamington Arts Center. And the cost to do that through the tender process is approximately $100,000. The final extent of the proposed landscaping and site furnishings were greater than anticipated during the preparation of our preliminary estimates, as the particulars of the proposed work were to be decided during the Uptown Master Planning process. The works to create the desired outcomes in the area of healthy trees, landscaping, lighting, and street furniture was tendered at approximately $400,000. Administration is recommending that council proceed with the full extent of the works. For council's consideration, we also wanted to note that the combined sewer system in the alley, they are clay tiles that were installed in 1916. The combined sewer, in another part of the alley was installed in 1929. The infrastructure is well past its estimated useful life, and it really should be replaced if any significant surface works are proposed. The road profile and streetscape included in the design specifications are consistent with the recommended outcomes of our forthcoming Uptown Master Plan, and they were developed after some considerable consultation with community stakeholders. And we're not really replacing like-for-like infrastructure here. Mill Street has been designed as a community gathering place that will signal the first step towards revitalizing the municipal infrastructure in the uptown area and provide a new look for our uptown Leamington. Given the desire to construct Mill Street in 2018, a budget for the project was required before design work for the project had begun, and the full extent of the works was unknown. So you will note in Table 1 that the 2017 estimated cost for the works was just under $1.7 million. And if you look at the line we marked as total in Table 1 at the far right, we have a variance of just under $1.4 million. So to address that variance, the municipality did receive approval earlier in 2018 to reallocate a surplus of just over $600,000 from the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund to this Mill Street project, and that surplus was a result of the Danforth sewer separation project being completed under budget. And this would now result in the Mill Street reconstruction project receiving 20% federal government funding. The 2017 sewer operating and capital budgets closed in a surplus position of just over $1 million, and it's recommended that $672,758 of that surplus be used to fund this project through a transfer from the infrastructure reserve. And the administration is also recommending that just over $95,000 be allocated from our federal gas tax reserve, which had a balance of $1.95 million at year-end 2018. So we are recommending that council move ahead and award this project to J&J LaPera Infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Alan. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Worship. I got a real sticker shock when I see the difference that we originally budgeted for this and what happened. But I had a lengthy discussion with our CEO in respect to the cost and the incurred costs on this, and then without any impact actually to our tax structure, that there would be no increases that were required to do this. I believe this is an important part of the revitalization that we've all been so anxious to start going in the downtown area. So I guess I'm pretty well satisfied that we can do this through utilizing the different funds that are available to us without any, I guess, tax implications. So I'll be in support of this. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I just have a question at the moment, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry?
I said I just have a question at the moment.
Okay. Yep.
Alan, so the Clean Water Wastewater Fund has a surplus of $602,000. Is that, are we normally able to take surpluses from funding like that and apply them to different projects? That just seems like something I'm not familiar with.
You're correct. This program was unique in that we were allowed to submit, in our case, we submitted for 4 projects, but there was one large amount that we were able to divide between different projects. And through the program, we were also able to reallocate just as we did. But it's not typical. Typically, we would apply for one project. We would be required to expend that money, and whatever we don't expend, we would either have to, well, we wouldn't be able to collect that back from the funding agencies. But this particular one was unique.
2 more, if I may. Could this be applied to a homeowner portion at all? This funding?
That's not something we typically have done on any of our other
Okay.
sewer separation
Yes.
projects.
I figured you would say that, so that I'm fine with that. So then if we didn't use this portion, if we didn't use this money, it would be gone? Or do we have it in the bank and it can be used at any time into perpetuity?
We were able to, the fund itself has been extended to 2021. We were able to one time reallocate some funding to other projects, and we looked at this project and thought this was an appropriate project to do that. I don't believe we'd be allowed to do another reallocation to another project.
The question, though, is do we have that money in the bank right now, or is this money that we have to collect after the project is completed?
I believe this,
Correct.
do we have the money in the bank?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, As we report on the expense of the project, we recover money. So as we spend the money, we recover the money. So we try to expense on all funding projects quarterly so we can recover money quickly. So that's kind of most funding projects are twice annually. We try to do it quarterly just so we've got big projects. We got a lot of money coming in and out. So we try to, get that money rolling as fast as we can.
Okay, and then one more, I'm sorry. So then, we need to use this money for this, as you said. I'm understanding that correctly. If we don't use it now, that money technically will not be available. Okay, great, thank you very much.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Worship. Alan, if you don't mind, I want to go back to the picture that's provided here, attachment number 1. I was talking to Alex earlier today about this. The last time we had R.C. Spencer here, some delegates from the LAC showed up that night to speak in regards to the importance of having parking out front. And that night we agreed with R.C. Spencer to carve back the bulb out portion for 2 spots in front of the LAC. Now, when I spoke with Alex earlier today, he said that this is an old picture that's being used, that we're looking at here. I just want to get confirmation. Is that going to be adjusted back by 2 parking spaces?
The discussion that we had at council when we brought the report for the layout, exactly as we discussed that night, it is laid out. So there's the 2 parking spaces dedicated for loading and unloading on the north side of the art gallery, and the parking space for the LAC director it would be on the south west side of the building. Okay. So there is exactly how we discussed that night. They get the parking space dedicated for their director and then the 2 loading zones on the front.
Fantastic. It's just that we're looking at a picture that doesn't show that, correct?
That's correct.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dunn.
Through your worship. Alex, Alan, I'm not sure which. Because this is a sewer separation project, is there any cost to the businesses?
There is a cost to the businesses. It works out to an average per property about $6,400. So there's the frontage for the sanitary sewer and the sanitary sewer connection, and it varies property to property depending on the width, but the average is $6,400.
And when it comes to the budget that you've laid out here, so this is money we're going to get it back in the future?
That's correct.
Councillor Verbicki.
Thank you, Worthy Mayor. I don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling about this. We try to get our budget done early so we can get good tenders, and all of a sudden now we're $1.4 million over budget. I'm not knocking the people and the businesses on Mill Street, but I think the money could be used elsewhere into a different plan. I don't support what is presented here just because of the overcharge. Whose fault was it? Was it Spencer? Who's in charge of the estimating? I know it's over, but how can we just do this? I mean, what's the sense of having a budget if we know we're going to pay it anyway? That's, got to have some guidelines. And to me, it just, I don't like it. And also, I know that some of the business on Mill Street do discharge to the sewer to the south of their buildings in that alley. So what happens now? They have to repay again? 24 Mill Street is one. So I just want to make sure that everybody is paying their fair share. But if you're not, this is not including the alley behind these businesses, right? Like Stitch and Time, Critchlow, Cedar Cafe.
I guess to answer your first question, I'm responsible for the budget. So we did work through, to the best of our ability, establishing the budget for all of our projects. In this case, I described in the report that we did have an expanded scope. We did quite a bit more than we thought we might do in this work on Mill Street to try to capture and to do the best we can to, I guess, implement some of the findings of the Uptown Master Plan. But we also ran into a situation where there are, well, a number of municipalities that are taking advantage of the same funding programs, and the contractors in Essex County are quite busy. Some of the unit prices in this contract we're paying a premium for to get this work done now. So we didn't want to see these numbers. We got, I think, five general contractors picked up. We were hoping to get more interest in this. At the end of the day, 2 submitted. But it is a combination of the times, the number of funding programs that are available, and the amount of work that we want to do. And to answer your other question about the sewer separation, the properties on Erie Street that are receiving new sewers will be paying their share of the sewer works.
But yet there's sewers, now this over budget of this does not include the sewers on the alleyway behind Critchlow's and Cedar Cafe and the Sewing Place and Bratz. This is not in here, but yet that's where their sanitary sewers go.
There's no sewer in that alley.
Well, that's where one guy says he's pumping it into, and then he refuses to pay the front, so you'll have to answer to him. So,
Okay.
And I just, you know, I'm not pleased with the results. I mean, everybody is. It maybe it's something we got to do, but if we found, I haven't met with anybody, but prior to, but if we found money, but it's still taxpayer money, and I just don't get it yet.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Councillor Verbeke, I share your concerns, but from what we talked about at budget versus to what the project has grown in size, which increased, well, it's explained right here that, so, you know, I had those same concerns too when we first read that, so I don't want you to think the rest of us are taking that lightly, but yeah, the size of the project has increased, and so are the cost to perform the project now, so that's my only thoughts in regard. I'm not happy either that we got to go over a budget amount, but I feel it's necessary, and we have an explanation why, so that's my thoughts on that part.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again. Well, Larry, I think we all committed at strategic planning that we wanted to see the Uptown succeed, and to me, this is a huge skin in the game commitment. Yes, it's painful, but we're also able to access $600,000 that would basically go up in smoke if we didn't do it. So to my way of thinking, not only have we increased the scope, which added to the dollar amount, we're also able to get into $602,000 that we would not otherwise be able to get into. For me, this is a project that really shows that we're serious. We've been serious on the waterfront. I didn't hear anyone complaining when we paid $1 million for properties, and I found that to be fairly painful, but worth it. And now look at our waterfront. It is well used. It is a jewel in the county, and to me that was worth it. And I'm hoping that this is going to be the start as well. We're looking at Mill Street as being the beginning, and we will use it to show what we can do and what we're willing to do going further. To now either skimp out or chicken out, I don't believe is an option on the table. It will show that we really are not serious about committing to the Uptown, and I'm not prepared to do that. I think we are in danger of losing our Uptown if we don't do something. I think we need to show young entrepreneurs and investors that we too are serious, not just them. And hopefully when we show that, there will be more that will come to the table with their own private funds. To me, the rebuilding of the Uptown, I'm going to call it rebuilding because I think it's beyond just revitalization. We need to rebuild. And it's going to take public and private money. And I believe by us putting this money on the table, showing that we're serious, will lead to gains down the road. That will also be increase in taxes, hopefully new businesses coming in. And as a little aside, I worked for 10 years at the eyeglass shop. We were constantly dealing with sewer smells to the point of headaches and so on. If we can make the working environment better for businesses, that's also a plus. It's a health and safety factor. So to me, yes, it's painful. Yes, I'm not one to throw money away frivolously either, but I do think at the end of the day, this will be a plus not only for our municipal pocketbooks, but also for quality of life for the residents in our community, and as well as growing the tax base. So for me, I'm in it because I don't think there are any losers in this game, and I'd like to show confidence of this council going forward that we do believe, like the city of Detroit, we can pull our whatever out of the ashes and build something new. So for me, that's the reason I'm in on this one.
Councillor Verbicki?
Thank you, Mayor, but first of all, Deputy Mayor McDonald, I'm not chickening out. We know it's got to be done, but it's just a hard pill to swallow. And when you get calls from people that read this online, and they're going, what the hell are you doing? Because it's almost double. And you try to explain it to them, and you're wasting our money. And these are some of the people that, well, one in particular that has a business down there. And he can't understand why it costs so much more. I know the alleys there is bad because I have a friend who's getting gray water in his basement and they can't seem to fix it. So I'm okay with that, but I guess it just blows my mind that you say it's this much and it's that much. If you do a budget for your home and you doubled your budget, you ain't gonna have a home too long. So I know we gotta do it, but I just don't like it. I know, and we're all that way too, but I know does it have to be done now? I don't want to cheapen it out, but maybe we can save, $500,000. Is that going to help or not? I don't know.
Deputy Mayor?
But we're enlarging the scope of it. So if you build a house and you add on square footage, or you put in better, what do you call it? What do you call those things? Better features. If you increase the quality of your features, you're going to increase the cost of your house. And then if you have access to $600,000, why wouldn't we do that? That already brings that 1.3 million down to 700,000. If the person would bother to read the fine details and find out exactly how we're increasing the scope, they really shouldn't have that big of a problem because it will benefit them as well. It benefits all of us. We're not just throwing it out, adding humongous bells and whistles. We're trying to increase the scope of it at the west end, add parking, trying to make it a place where people will congregate for gatherings, for markets, and that kind of thing. To me, this is a golden opportunity. To put it off 2 years, I would be willing to wager that you will increase the scope, the cost of the project, and your 600,000 may very well be inaccessible. So to not do it now, to me, has greater risks.
I'm going to jump in. No, really, Councillor Verbicki, I was actually going to steal your line of not feeling warm and fuzzy about this. But when you read the report and you hear Alan talking about these sewers have been there since 1916, is that what you said? And 1922, obviously a little bit overdue in being replaced. And having been a business person up in the Uptown too, in a number of locations, I can attest to the issues that are there when it comes to sewer smells and so on. When our CEO brought this, the first bit of bad news to me, I'm thinking that's where I wasn't warm and fuzzy. And I thought, okay, so how do we make this fit within the budget? And you can take that nice big rounding corner off of the west end there in front of the art gallery, and you can shrink it back down to where we were originally talking. And I thought, okay, that might make sense. But then they came back with saying, well, but we have this extra 600 grand, which we're talking about, that it's not our taxpayers' money, it's, I assume, the province, right? The provincial provincial money. I know, but it's like this much versus whatever. So yeah, why not use it? So that brought me back, and then the CAO came in again. He says, we just found something else out, and then it's going to be another $300,000 or $400,000 more. But then the final statement was, we've got it covered. So I think it was Councillor Jacobs, you said it right at the beginning, we're not going back and hitting the taxpayer with this project. And like the Deputy Mayor said, we really have to make an impression. And just for the groan factor, my impression would have been on Talbot Street West and Erie Street North and South, but we're starting with Mill Street. Council has said yes to making this project I guess the showpiece of what we plan to do in the Uptown. And when I look around and I see the other municipalities who've spent their tax dollars in their Uptown cores, even if it's just replacing all the sidewalks like Tilbury, the change is magical. So I kind of expect the same thing to happen here. And along the lines of the waterfront, that was my note as well. We hesitated. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of money we're spending down there, but what a win. It was the right thing to do. The property was available. We bought it. We knew it was the right thing to do. And I know this is the right thing to do too. We have to, this council, this town has to step forward and say, we're saving the heart. We're saving the heart of our community, and this is step number one of however many steps there are going to be. So as much as I wasn't warm and fuzzy, as much as I was ready to scale it back, I'm at the point where, no, we're committed. We're committed to the waterfront. We've got to be committed to our town, and I'm ready to move ahead on this as well. So, and that's not meant as a bad comment, just my own thoughts. Councillor Verbeke.
Really, Mayor, thanks. I mean, I've got nothing with staff. They did a great report. They do their best. But to come back in on Danforth and finding money, then maybe you should start overestimating things. Go 20% more, that you look like geniuses when you come back. I can't, it's like the Bevel line thing. I mean, it would be better that you and then we would only, if we're 95 or 600,000, well, that'd be better. So I have been kind of swayed, but I mean, in the budget,
it's
go
a tough
over.
pill.
I mean, I don't know how that works. I mean, I'm not an expert, but common sense would say if you're over budget, why would you do it?
Yeah. Councillor?
Nothing more to that, but Alan or Alex, JJ LaPera, they got a lot of shovels in the ground around Leamington, a lot of projects going on. This company, are they confident they got the resources to pull this out still in this construction season? Or is it going to be the last day of the year?
I spoke with Joe LaPere Sr. and Joe Francisco, the two partners, today, and we spoke with them when we were writing this report about their construction schedule, because, yeah, they have a mainline crew on Peely Bevel, they got a mainline crew on Erie Street South, they have a mainline crew on Olette Street in Windsor, so there is big work that they are doing. They are assuring us that their plan is to, if council approves this project this evening, they will get the notice to commence work tomorrow morning, and from that point, they have a month for locates, ordering materials. They will be the middle of August starting, and there's a 70-day construction window in the contract that needs to be complete. So if they started August 13th, their completion date would be November 16th. So depending on materials and locates, they could start the week before, or maybe a week after, but tentatively right now, they would have their shovel on Mill Street, detour set up, ready to dig August 13th.
And one last comment. One of the business owners over on Mill Street asked what type of alert they're going to get prior to a shovel showing up on Mill Street. How does that work?
So typically, we have our pre-construction meeting, so the notices would be sent out from that date. So pre-construction meeting, let's say the end of next, or the middle of next week to the end of next week, then they would lay out a kind of a rough schedule, a start date From that point, the notices would go out from the municipality to the business owners or the property owners stating J&J LaPera has been contracted. We will, begin construction on this day. It will have a contact information for myself, the site foreman or the site supervisor from LaPera. Spencer Consulting would have their site individuals' contact information on there, so any questions that they have during construction, they could, contact any one of us. But the notices would come through us, and then as things change, they would get more notices. It's a short street, so we can do hand delivery if something changes instead of putting it in the mail. It is a sensitive area. LaPera is aware of that. Businesses need to remain open. We need to keep access to the businesses. They've done similar projects on Walkerville and Windsor where they've had great success with the businesses. So I'm not really concerned with the construction and the business patrons being able to enter the businesses. So notifications will be key, but I don't really foresee a whole big issue.
Fantastic. You answered my next question then, was the access to the businesses. I understand on the south side of Mill Street, they can all access to the back end. It's a little more, I was more concerned about the north side of Mill Street. You say access will be available.
Pedestrian access will be available, yeah. Once the equipment gets on the road, you won't be able to get the vehicles through the road. So we'll have to work with them for deliveries. We'll have to work with them for any major access that they need, and those are things that we can coordinate with the businesses directly. But pedestrian access will be maintained at all times. I mean, obviously, we're going to be pouring new concrete, new sidewalk work in front of their doors, so there may be a short period of time where they can't get in and out, but we'll try to mitigate that as much as possible.
Mr. Neufeld?
I know it's not going to make a big difference, but I wanted to try and address a little bit of Councillor Fabriki's concerns about the setting of the budget and being over budget. This project went out of order a little bit, and it was because of councils saying that this is a priority project. Let's get this thing going. Let's get it done in 2018. You heard Alan say at the beginning of his report that the budget was set prior to the design. Normally we go and do the design first and then come in with a budget. Because of the urgency of the priority of this, we looked at other projects that looked on the face of it similar. And that's where we can come up with the $1.6 million. Once we found out about the extra sewer line, well, there was a $360,000 increase right off the top. Then we had public consultations where there were, the public indicated some of the desires that they'd like to see in this. And, even in that, looking at the Albert, Fox, Talbot, Mill intersection, you also heard Alan say that there would be new streetlights and ramps, sidewalks. And those streetlights are now going to be accessible, and so will the sidewalks. So the improvements in those areas that, the mayor talked about maybe scaling this back, there are some really important values that are going to come out of it. But I think the most important part of this is that first, the sewers, we didn't realize that other sewer in the alleyway would have to be done. If we had done the design first, we would have known that. So then our budgeting would have been much closer to what you're actually seeing here. So I know that that doesn't necessarily address it, but that is this. I remember right after the meeting, Director of Infrastructure, Rob Sharon, had said to me, that's going to be tough to do because we haven't done our design work. This is out of order. This is what can happen sometimes when you get out of order, but the value of the project is still there. It's not that anybody missed anything, it's just that we thumbed it, we said about 1.6 million, and then as we designed it, we found other things that had to be dealt with. I don't know if that gives you any solace, but there is an explanation for that.
Council's wishes. Deputy Mayor moves. Support by Councilor Wilkinson. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Get to work. Next report is one regarding Erie Street South and the Highbury Crossing. Mr. Botham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I felt when I was putting this report together a need to just recap some of the things we've done in this location since 2013 regarding the pedestrian crossings that occur between the Highbury buildings. So during council's discussion to approve a contract to reconstruct the Erie Oak intersection in February of 2013, council resolved that the request to tender for the reconstruction of Erie Oak intersection traffic signal upgrades include a mid-block pedestrian signal located at Erie Street South and the front entrance to the H.J. Heinz Company as a provisional item to be subject to a further report by staff, from staff. By way of that same subsequent to that, by way of engineering report 0513, administration presented a report, proposed Erie Street pedestrian crossing evaluation prepared by Dillon Consulting, dated March 6, 2013. And council resolved that the provision of a mid-block pedestrian signal on Erie Street South be removed from the Erie Oak intersection reconstruction project. And that's because the findings of Dillon Consulting was that at the time, traffic signal was not warranted. And that's using the older methods for analyzing the need for pedestrian crossings. Then on August of 2016, council resolved to adopt the Leamington Active Transportation Plan prepared by the MMM Group as the basis for future Municipality of Leamington Active Transportation Network improvements and policies. The plan proposed that Erie Street South between Askew Street and Countess would have designated bike lanes. Also, that same year, 2016, the Province of Ontario provided critical updates to the Ontario Traffic Manual, Book 15, guideline regarding pedestrian crossings, and a methodology and decision-making process now exists to assess and grade crossings and providing more options for design professionals. Then further to the December 12, 2017 meeting of council and questions regarding proposed reduction of lanes on Erie Street South, the designer, R.C., and that again was the reduction of lanes along Erie Street South. The designer, R.C. Spencer, was asked to review and comment on the impact to traffic service levels as a result of the proposed road diet or the reduction in lanes of travel. Then administration presented the findings of R.C. Spencer on May the 14th, 2018, and by way of resolution, council did not accept the reduction of lanes along Erie Street South between Oak Street and Melrose, and therefore the proposed configuration of the PXO or pedestrian crossing in the vicinity of Highbury-Canco between the main doors did not move forward. And it was further expressed in that same meeting in May of 2018 that a further report would be presented to council to discuss possible options. This report is in place of a report from a designer to present council with options. We're instead coming back to council requesting that we appoint a professional engineer to review several things that we think we need to do or at least address in this location. And one is a full reassessment of Dillon's report that they prepared in 2013, look at their conclusions, and then note the recent amendments to the Ontario Traffic Manual. They'll also look at, if we do proceed with this design or with this assignment, they would identify what they call now desire points or desire lines that are integral to the decision-making process in establishing PXOs. It would also include a review of alternatives such as a modified 3-lane cross-section at the crossing location itself that might comply with the guidelines of the Ontario Traffic Manual, but still provide in the majority of Erie Street South the 4-lane cross-section that we have today. They'd also look at a mid-block pedestrian signal, and again, those are similar to the crossing that we have at the hospital on Talbot Street. The third thing they could look at is the identification of infrastructure and what I call positive guidance that would prohibit pedestrians from crossing Erie Street between Highbury-Canco main doors. And that could include things like fencing or walls or something like that, a physical barrier to crossing. They'd also look at preparing functional plans of these alternatives that we can come back to council and present for your consideration. RC Spencer has done all of the work on our PXO and AT study in the area. They looked at they provided us with the last report to council on this same crossing, and we're recommending that for the $8,800 that they proposed, that RC Spencer be allowed to continue and provide council with some options for this crossing. And we're recommending that since we aren't building the crossing at the moment and doing some of the road works that were included in the PXO and AT study implementation program, that there's money in that budget and that we fund this work out of that budget.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. I guess the question I have is, why are we doing this? Why isn't Highbury doing it? Is there employees that are crossing the street? If they're looking at health and safety measures, do you think they would be part and parcel of it? Or, like, I don't know why we're doing it. To me, it's their issue. I know we debated this quite a while back in respect to this, and we said, well, they should be using the intersection. It's not that far away. But I don't know why we're paying for it when it's a Highbury issue.
Rob, you can certainly expand on this, but my suggestion or recommendation to council is that if we have pedestrians walking and crossing within the right-of-way, it's municipal responsibility to look at this.
Sure.
Well, I see where you're coming from, but I personally, like from a personal aspect of it, I'm not, I guess, qualified to your capacity or anything else to make those comments. But I think we have a intersection just 50, 60 feet down the street from these main doors. The discussion back when in 2013, whenever this came up to us previously, was that they would utilize those intersections. And I know what you're saying, but that's no different than somebody crossing the street anywhere on Erie Street, technically. Is that, it's a municipal road or whatever, are we responsible because someone wants to cross in the middle of a block? And I just think it's not our issue.
Councillor Verbicki. Oh, sorry, Mr. Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I was simply going to comment that I think both the courts, as well as recommendations within the Ontario traffic manuals, have determined that municipalities do have an inherent obligation to provide safe public right-of-way. And if we are aware of pedestrians crossing in a certain location, again, I think they call them desire points, that we do have an obligation to look at that. Is it protecting people from themselves? Possibly, because certainly an argument can be made that the traffic signal is only 150 meters away or maybe less. Why don't people go down to cross there? That may be true, but we know people are crossing at that location. And therefore, we have an obligation to understand it. Ultimately, depending on the outcome of the study, the recommendation may be to put some physical barriers in to prevent people from crossing at those desire points, to force them down to the traffic signal. But this is what this study will do, and I think if council agrees to go ahead with the study, council certainly exercising due diligence and looking at this particular situation that everyone recognizes as a potential pedestrian safety issue.
Councillor Verbicki.
Where the mayor thanks, but I guess I was under the assumption that all the PXOs are going to go in where there's courtesy crossings. Why do we need a study? I was under the assumption that we were putting one there at Highbury anyway, so just like we've put them up all over the place. The road diet, has that all changed that now, or I missed one meeting, so maybe that was the meeting you talked about it.
The current road cross section does not allow for the construction of one of these new modified PXOs that you see us opening around town. It literally falls off out of the decision matrix when you get down to 4 lanes of traffic and the road is this wide and you have this many vehicles. The only other option is a crossing or a physical barrier to prevent crossing. We can't use the new modified crossing. The idea when we came back to council and said we'd like to put a PXO and replace the courtesy crossing in front of Highbury was connected to bringing in the active transportation plan recommendations to put the bike lanes in that same area. And when we threw all those things into the mix, into the design, reducing the number of lanes of travel, it allowed us to put a PXO in that you see at, say, along Seacliff Drive near the Roma Club. But if we don't reduce the number of lanes, if we keep 4 lanes of traffic, then the only other alternative is a full pedestrian signal.
So just so everybody else hears it, the PXO, the way I understood it from our discussion, say on Seacliff Drive, I don't know if it's going to have flashing lights on it or not, but if it does, traffic stops until that pedestrian is across their lane and then they can go. Whereas this potential that we may have to put in at Highbury across 4 lanes, it will be a full stop both ways until the light turns back to say go.
So you had a number of questions there. So or
sure
comments. The PXO crossing is not a stop sign. It's not a yield sign, and it's not a traffic signal. A red, amber, green. It's not that. In those 3 cases, you can wait for the pedestrian to clear your lane of travel, and then you can proceed.
Okay.
If you're at a PXO or an uncontrolled crossing that's not marked at all, you have to wait for the pedestrian to cross the entire width of the road. But getting back to this location, there's only 4 options. We put up some kind of barrier, we put up a full pedestrian signal, or we reduce the number of lanes of travel and go back to the PXO that we were talking about.
And the full pedestrian signal is the one that will, everybody stops.
Correct.
Until, and it's lit, a red light, like we have out at the hospital.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So we'll stop. We've got the stoplights at Oak Street, and then we'll have another stoplight when people want to cross. And then, okay. All right. So $8,800 will get Spencer to come back with 4 recommendations as to what we can consider, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, they'll look at the things that I provided in the comment section and look at the bullet points that I provided there.
Okay, all right. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. This consultant report will come back with the same 4 recommendations that you've got here, wouldn't it? Basically. Like, I don't really understand where we're going, and I'm having difficulties finding that, and with due respect to your comment, that we have an obligation, I guess, if it's being used as a crossing. But I still don't feel where the municipality comes into play with this. I really, really don't. I got an issue with it.
I see we have a moral obligation. I mean, they've been crossing there forever and ever and ever, and we know it. And I think that's what Mr. Sharon's point is. We know they're crossing there, so we have that obligation to protect those citizens. So I understand where you're coming from, too.
I'm not against trying to get somebody hurt.
Yep. Councillor Wilkinson.
Just as I'm sitting here listening to the conversation go on, I recall it like the way you did, Councillor Verbeke, when we discussed it here about a month ago or so in regards to the road diet, that it was already set and we were going ahead with it. So tonight to have this, I think Councillor Jacobs' comments are very fair in regards to Highbury being the one responsible to, get their employees to cross the road safely. I think there's some merit in his comments there. You know, I kind of think back to that church over on Fox Street. They knew that their kids were crossing the alley there. Well, they took it upon themselves to build infrastructure that remedied that. And I thought that was quite amazing what they did. They're super serious about the safety of their children. I think about my work. If we were crossing the road to go to the corner store or something, what would my work, you know, be doing? They'd be coming and correcting us and saying, hey, you gotta go down to the, you know, the intersection and cross there safely, is what my work would be telling me. $8,800 for this, I'm curious to see what the outcome of this is. I'm wondering if one of the recommendations could be the municipality doesn't have to do anything at all. It's up to Highbury Canco to either put physical barriers up, retrain their staff, educate their staff, you know, build a bridge, whatever. That might be something that we mention to the author of the R.C. Spencer, you know, to consider re-educating Highbury staff. It's just one thought I have.
I can tell you that I recall the conversation very, very well because I was very supportive of doing the road diet. And that's the only way that PXO crossing could be put in there. And it was clearly stated to us that if we didn't do the road diet, we stay at 4 lanes, then we have to seek alternative measures of getting a crossing there. So, yeah. So, Mr. Neufeld?
Even if we take the position that Highbury ought to be taking care of their employees in redirecting them to go down to the end, until the insurance legislation is changed, that includes that municipalities, even if we're only 1% at fault, we can be paying the full claim. Until that changes, I would strongly suggest that we need to at least take the steps to have a traffic engineer give us the best advice we can to protect ourselves from that 1%.
Deputy Mayor?
I don't think we really have any choice here. There's already been one fatality. I think we either bite the bullet and do the $8,800 or we do the other two choices, which are put in a pedestrian crossing or block off the street. To me, $8,800 to make sure we're doing the right thing, we have all our choices, is well worth it. I don't want to see somebody else get hit. We've already heard from Rob, and we trust what he says, that it's our obligation. Whether we think it's our obligation or not, in this case, isn't going to carry all that much weight. If he's telling us that, according to the provincial laws and all that, and so on, we don't have any choice. We either put in the stoplight, we put in a barrier, or we pay the $8,800 and find out what is the best option.
Councillor Verbicki?
Is that road diet out? Can the road diet go to Georgia instead of Melrose? Just get some black paint and paint the lines.
Mr. Neufeld?
That may be one of the recommendations that comes back from R.C. Spencer, is to take the road diet, extend Erie Street's profile that is immediately north of Oak and take it through to Georgia. I would suggest, though, that that's just a hop, skip, and a jump to Countess, which was the original plan, but that may be. Was it Melrose? Yeah,
I think it was Melrose.
You're correct. It was Melrose, but that may be one of the recommendations that comes back.
Okay. Councillor Dunn? Move the recommendation. Okay. Supported by Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next report is one on being a lame duck council. Ms. Percy. Great titles.
Section 275 of the Municipal Act reflects a methodology with respect to lame duck provision of an outgoing council. A council can become restricted in the actions that it can take on one or two separate periods. The first period being after nomination day, July 27th to before voting day, October 22nd. And the second period is after voting day to the end of the term. Council is not a lame duck council if 3/4 or 75% of its sitting members will continue in the new council. The restricted acts of council under 2 Section 5 include the appointment or removal from office of any officer of the municipality, the hiring or dismissal of any employee of the municipality, the disposition of any real or personal property of the municipality which has a value exceeding $50,000 at the time of disposal, and making any expenditures or incurring any other liability which exceeds $50,000. It's important to note that subsection C and D, with respect to disposition of any property or making expenditures or incurring any other liability exceeding $50,000, is only applicable if it wasn't included in the 2018 budget. Council will be subject to these restrictions of the Act only when it has become mathematically impossible for 3/4 of the members of the outgoing council to be re-elected. As Leamington Council consists of 7 members, in the event of 2 or more positions are contested after nomination day, Leamington Council will be restricted from the Act set out in Section 275. Given the current nominations filed, Council will not be in a lame duck position for the period after nomination day but before voting day, as it has been determined with certainty that not less than 75% of the current members of Council will be returning to sit on the new Council. Determining if Council will be in a lame duck position for the second period, beginning October 22nd to November 30th, it cannot be done until the results of the election are known. In order to take steps to lessen the impact of these restrictions, Council may choose to delegate temporary authority to the CAO during the lame duck period. A bylaw delegating temporary authority to the CAO to carry out certain duties during this period is before Council for consideration. The bylaw contains certain restrictions that the CAO is subject to in carrying out these duties as delegated by Council, including submitting a report to Council advising of the exercise of the delegated authority as soon as practical following the commencement of the term of the new Council. There's no financial impact associated with the delegation of authority. And just so Council is aware, the difference between this election and the past election is that the nomination day is July 27th, where in the previous election, before the changes to the Elections Act, it was in September. So the period was quite short, where now it is much longer. And then, as you know, you can't determine if you're a lame duck council until, in the second period, till after the election results. It would be too late at that time to pass the bylaw to delegate the authority. So it is recommended that Council delegate temporary authority to the CAO under Section 275 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of restricted acts after nomination day until the new Council commences on December 1st. The bylaw 4518 be brought before Council for consideration. And just if I can add that Council, the bylaw that was included in the agenda, unfortunately, was not the last revision, so I've included on Council's desk the most current revision, and I've highlighted in yellow what those changes were. And essentially, it's just wording which was not provided for in the 2018 budget when it talks about disposing any real property and expenditures, which is consistent with the wording in the Municipal Act.
Thank you very much. Questions, Council? Councilor Verbeke?
Where the mayor, just for my own head, not that I don't trust Peter, but can we give him if it's not in the budget, he can't go out and start buying $49,000 properties, 10 in a row because we given him the authority.
Oh, I would imagine. Any property purchase usually comes through close, but do you want to try and address that, or?
I wouldn't want to have to write the report to council on having purchased 10 properties at 49,000. I suppose, but to tell you the truth, I really don't want this authority. But I think it's necessary in the best interest of the municipality.
Well, then under that, where the mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Support by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Next report is the year-end variance. Ms. Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned in my previous report, the audited financial statements identified an accumulated surplus of $286.7 million under PSAB. The 2017 year-end variance analysis report that's in front of you now provides the cash surplus from the levied taxes and fees collected to operate the municipal services and invest in infrastructure. So the 2017 tax-funded surplus is $2.7 million, and the details by department are outlined in Schedule 2. Schedule 3, included in the report, includes the in-year transfers to reserves for projects that were ongoing at year-end. These amounts were included in the 2018 budget, as well as for the 2017 projects that did not exceed their approved funding amounts, as Council gave direction to administration to do so during our budget discussions. Schedule 4 is a new schedule that we're providing to Council this year to provide some additional insight on the reserve and reserve fund balances. As at December 31st, 2017, the balance in the reserve funds and reserves totaled $65 million. So this is almost 15 more million than we anticipated as part of the 2017 budget. The municipality continues to be in a strong financial position with healthy reserve levels. There are 7 main areas that contribute to the $2.7 million surplus that I will highlight. First, the sewer department, which accounts for $1 million, or about 40% of the variance. As Alan mentioned earlier, the Danforth project in total was under budget. However, the project is split in between 2 areas, the engineering, actually 3, sorry, engineering, sewer, and water. So $300,000 of this sewer variance is related to this project, as there was additional CWWF funding from 2016 that was received in 2017. So that was just a timing of when the recoveries came in. As well, the Erie Street Oak to Askew landowner portion was billed and recovered in 2017. Work on the Selkirk Drain and the George Evan Bank was not completed in 2017, and that also contributed to the surplus. And the sewer levy portion of the tax appeals that were settled during the year was only $37,000 compared to a budget of $126,000. Tax adjustments for the general levy were also much lower than expected by about $560,000. Tax appeals continue to be filed. Some of the big box appeals have been settled. However, there are a few that continue to be worked through with MPAC, the municipality, the property owners, and the Assessment Review Board. Thirdly, investment income was higher than budget by approximately $250,000 as a result of the change in the Bank of Canada interest rate, which impacts the interest earned at WFCU, and an improved cash position. The fourth item is that all full-time staff positions were included in the budget for the entire year for all departments to make sure that the funding for the positions was sustainable year over year. As Council recalls, there were several vacancies throughout 2017, including some new positions. As a result, these various departments had favorable salaries and benefits that totaled about $240,000. Supplemental tax revenue is another contribution to the surplus, and the budget is prepared based on trending of prior years. In 2017, total supplemental tax revenues was $360,000, which was over double the conservative budget. The target for MPAC is to have any change in property values assessed within 1 year. We also expect that the budget in 2018 will be exceeded. Within the Public Works Department, the municipal portion of the drainage costs were under about $181,000. There are 2 parts to this explanation, one being the value of the work that was completed in 17, which was less than planned, and also is a prior period correction related to the estimate for 2016 drainage works compared to what was finally billed. Also in the report, we have outlined a change in the way that labor is categorized in between Public Works and the Parks Department. The 2017 budget allocated salaries to many different job categories. A review in 2017 with the department decided to reduce that number of categories that the labor was charged. This simplified the process. However, it makes it difficult to compare actuals to budget within the departments. So the chart on page 4 of my report explains that in total, Public Works and Park departments who share employees had salaries that were favorable to budget. Offsetting these favorable variances was the amphitheater project. The project's spending was $1.4 million and the budget was $1.2 million. Also included in Schedule 2 in the general government, water, and wastewater departments, the windup of the development charges were recorded. The expenses and revenues for this windup cancel each other out and have no impact to taxation. So with the 2017 surplus identified in Schedule 1, there are 8 transfers to reserves that administration is recommending. So it's recommended that the sewer operating surplus of $1,079,000 be transferred to the infrastructure reserve to fund future maintenance and capital sewer projects. It's also recommended that $383,495 be transferred to the contingency reserve to manage unfunded one-time costs. The $150,000 rate stabilization, which was included in the 2017 budget, was not transferred prior to this recommendation. It's also recommended that $500,000 be transferred to the Library and Culture Services Reserve to assist with the funding of the renovation of the new library project. The design work is complete, and it is expected that the tender will be released later this week. The 2018 budget did not include this project, so this will be a good start to help fund the project. Work at the waterfront continues, and to help support the projects, it's recommended that $250,000 be transferred to the waterfront reserve. It's also recommended that $140,000 of additional funds from general taxation for the Danforth project be transferred to the engineering reserve. And I do have to apologize, there is a mistake on page 5 of my report that references $218,000 be transferred to the reserve. That was from a prior version of the report, so the actual transfer is $140 as outlined in Schedule 1. This reserve was not approved. This reserve transfer was not approved as part of the 2017 or 2018 budget and occurred as a result of the budgeted grant monies being allocated between engineering, water, and sewer. So in total, the grant monies were 75%. However, the budget allocated additional funds to the roads portion of the project. There is a corresponding offset within the sewer department. $200,000 is recommended to be transferred to the Fleet and Equipment Reserve to assist with the purchase of the new fire truck that was identified and deferred in the 2018 budget. With the new fire chief starting, it is expected that a review of the fleet composition will be completed. The life cycle replacement for fire services will need to be increased going forward. In addition, the operating surplus for the complex and fire services is also recommended to be transferred to their respective reserves. The user rate funded departments include parking, sanitation, PCC, and water, and are also outlined on page 6 of the report. These departments have a sustainable self-funding model. As such, the transfers have been outlined within the report. So therefore, it is recommended that the transfers, as I've outlined, of the 2017 municipal taxation funded surplus of $2,663,495 be approved. Information regarding transfers for the net financial positions of parking, sanitation, wastewater, and water departments for 2017 to the respective reserve accounts be received. Information regarding the transfers to reserves for 2017 committed capital projects be received, and that the schedules regarding the ending balances for the 2017 reserve and reserve funds be received.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Quick one from me. Supplemental tax revenue, twice what you expected, which is a good thing. Is that, can you tell me in layman's language what that is, supplemental tax revenue?
Certainly. So those would be not included in our final roll that we get from MPAC. So we base our total levy, our general and our sewer levy based on a weighted assessment value that MPAC gives us at the end of every year. These are properties that are not yet assessed or their change has not come through MPAC yet. So it would be new builds, it could be additions, greenhouses, that type of thing.
Okay. That's what I was hoping you were going to tell me. So in our little minds up here, when we keep saying we wiped out the development charges and now we're seeing all this building going on, I know you won't do it, but we could technically say this is part of the result of our doing that we've created supplemental tax revenue from our decisions. So that's good. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick question, Laura. I know before that we had looked at, like when Impact does their assessments and some of the appeals. Have we been following through with any of that, like appealing some of these assessments that we know are out of range from where they should be? And are we successful at all in doing that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we haven't formally issued an appeal to the Assessment Review Board. However, we meet with MPAC quarterly, and they have a new tool where the municipality can provide them information on changes in the assessment or changes in properties, and they can direct their resources to go and reevaluate those properties. So I am quite certain that we are seeing some of that come through as this supplemental tax revenue as well. In addition, we have been working very closely with our building department and MPAC to make sure that the information that we are feeding back to MPAC to trigger an assessment is being properly reported to them, because they have a few triggers. MPAC will to go out and assess. There's the ESA final permit approval, which is the electrical approval, or a closed building permit. So as we're working through our systems, we are continuing to work out some kinks, but MPAC has dedicated a student resource to go through and compare all of our building permits that have been closed in our system with theirs. So I fully anticipate that we will see a significant uptake as we work through that, and going forward, we will not have an issue.
Councillor.
Thank you. But further to that, I guess where I'm going with it as well is that if I appeal my tax and I'm successful, are we appealing some of those appeals? That's where I really was going with this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry about that. Yes, we do participate in all of the Assessment Review Board hearings. There's a new process actually that the ARB has started, and they're all done via teleconferences. They used to be in person, and we weren't sending resources to Toronto prior to that, so we do participate in them, and we are named on all of the appeals.
Okay. So there are recommendations here with regard to our surplus. What are council's wishes? Moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Councillor Verbeke. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Thank you. Next report is one regarding the Social Infrastructure Fund and rental housing component. Ms. Orden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2005, a report was approved by the city and the county that confirmed the need for additional rental units for low-income households across the region. The report indicated that there was a sufficient supply of rental units in the area, but an identified segment of the population was unable to afford the area market rents, and there was a need for lower than average market rent units. The city, as a designated service manager for the city, county, and Pelee Island, is responsible for administration and funding of housing and homelessness programs, as well as coordinating the provision of housing in the region. In 2006, a housing delivery plan was approved by the city and the county, which approved the delivery of and participation in the capital funding and home ownership components of the program that was in place at that time. Council for the municipality expressed an interest in participating in that program in 2006, and in 2009 there were some rental units that were constructed in the municipality of Leamington through that funding stream. Funding opportunities remained under that program until 2011, after which the federal and provincial governments partnered to fund the investment in affordable housing program until 2015. But going back a little bit, in 2012, the city began developing a housing and homelessness plan. That new 10-year plan was finalized in 2014, and in 2015, the federal and provincial governments extended the investment in affordable housing program that exists today. Council supported participation in that program in 2014 and 15, and as well in 2016 and 17. This year, Council has received correspondence from the city informing us that the Ministry of Housing again announced funding under the SIF rental housing component to be delivered under the Investment in Affordable Housing Program extension. This component of the program funds a developer up to 75% of the total capital cost per unit, or $150,000 per unit, whichever is less, on a 20-year forgivable loan basis. The province has added an emphasis on affordable housing for seniors. Participating landlords are required to maintain rents at 80% or less of the then current Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation or alternate average market rents for that 20-year duration. The city is planning to issue a request for proposals to private sector and nonprofit organizations under the SIF rental housing component in 2018 and requested confirmation that the municipality wishes to participate in the program this year. If a municipality does not participate, proposals received for projects located within the municipality are not eligible for this funding. To participate in the rental housing component, a municipality must reduce property taxes for the rental housing project by setting the tax rate equivalent to or lower than the single residential rate, or provide a grant in lieu to have the same effect, and pass a bylaw pursuant to the Municipal Act. Municipalities that agree to the single residential property tax requirement are referred to as participating municipalities, and there is not a specific allocation provided to each participating municipality. The Ministry of Housing encourages but does not require participating municipalities to provide exemptions from or reductions of development charges and Planning Act and related permit fees. So as indicated, municipalities in which approved projects are located would be required to then set the property taxes at a rate equivalent to or lower than the single residential rate for 20 years. And in the event there is a project approved for funding within the municipality, council may at that time consider an exemption from or reduction to any planning and or building permit fees. So the recommended action is that council confirm the municipality's participation in the Social Infrastructure Fund rental housing component of the Investment in Affordable Housing Program extension for 2018.
So, Ms. Horton, it's all well and good. I mean, we've dropped our development charges, they're gone, and I know we can waive permit fees if we so decide. But nothing in this report says that, I don't see any encouragement. It still remains the private sector, profit-driven businesses that will build affordable or housing that is affordable or apartments that are affordable. It's still out of our control.
That has been my experience, yes. It is up to the individual developers to choose to participate in the fund, in the program, to respond to the request for proposals. I think the municipality in eliminating the development charges has done its part in order to encourage all kinds of development, and then the province and the feds have come in with this funding. So it's not a municipally driven process except to indicate the participation.
The other concern is that I have is that this is run through the city of Windsor, correct?
Yes, the funding flows through the City of Windsor. They issue the request for proposals, and they enter into the agreements with the developers. And the municipality's contribution is just to pass the bylaw agreeing to set the tax rate. So it does all flow through the City of Windsor.
Do they have influence over where these houses will be built?
That I do not know what their process is to look at the request for proposals or what their criteria is.
Okay, all right. I mean, I'm supportive of this whole program. That I'm just saying, I just don't see where there's those hooks that get the developers to build what we know is needed. So, anyway, Councillor Dunn.
Through you, your worship. I just have one question. It was regarding the 20-year forgivable loan basis. What's that actually mean?
From what I understand, the loan may be forgiven at the end of 20 years if the project is completed and if it's held to the market rents for that period of time.
Moved by Councillor Verbeke, support by Councillor Jacobs. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. And then we have two addendums, both addressing noise bylaw exemptions. Who, Brianna. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. So as you said, this is the first of two requests regarding noise bylaw exemptions. The first one here, the municipality received a request for an exemption from the municipality's noise bylaw for the Nature Fresh Company picnic, which is to be held at 525 Essex Road 14 on Saturday, July 14th, which is outlined in the report there. The applicant is requesting permission to have music playing during the event for approximately 380 participants. The applicant has submitted a special event application in order to address the other aspects of the event, such as parking and other neighborhood impacts. The applicant has advised administration that they have contacted their neighbors within close proximity to the property to notify them of the noise bylaw exemption requests. At the time of writing this report, administration had not heard from any neighbors expressing concern. There's no financial impact on the municipality by granting the noise exemption request. And the recommendation is that council grant an exemption from Leamington's noise bylaw number 431-03, section 2.1, between the hours of 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. on Saturday, July 14th, 2018, for the Nature Fresh Company picnic to be held at 525 Essex Road 14.
Council's wishes. Moved by Deputy Mayor, support by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Yep. We're going to have to get you a microphone closer to your computer.
Sorry about that. Okay, so the second request is regarding 645 Highway 77. So the municipality received a request for an exemption for a wedding reception to be held at 645 Highway 77, Nature Fresh Farms, on Saturday, July 21st, 2018, which is highlighted in yellow there. The applicants are requesting permission to have music playing in a tent during the wedding reception for approximately 240 guests. The property owner approves of the event taking place on the property. The applicant has submitted a special event application in order to address the other aspects of the event. The applicant has also advised administration that they have contacted the neighbors within close proximity to the subject property to notify them of the noise bylaw exemption request. At the time of writing this report, administration had not heard from any neighbors expressing concern. And the recommendation is that council grant an exemption from Leamington's noise bylaw number 431-03, section 2.1, between the hours of 3 p.m. and 11:59 p.m. on Saturday, July 21st, 2018, and from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Sunday, July 22nd, 2018, for a wedding reception to be held at 645 Highway 77.
Moved by Councillor Verbeke, support by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. Matters for approval, we have the minutes from the Leamington Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee. Looking for council's approval. Councillor Dunn moves, support by Councillor Verbeke. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. There were no other matters for consideration, but we do have a report on closed session. Ms. Percy.
A closed meeting was held at 5:30 p.m. prior to the open session of council pursuant to subsection 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act for the purpose of considering two items. The first item, confidential report CAO 0218 dated June 25th, 2018, regarding potential sale of municipal lands. Councillor Dunn declared a conflict of interest and left the room. Council provided direction to administration with regard to the matter. The second item, confidential report LLS 4618 dated June 25th, 2018, regarding potential disposition of land, transfer, easement, and lease. As a result of this meeting, the following suggested action is before council for consideration in open session. First, transfer. Council authorized the transfer of the southerly 40 feet of the vacant lands fronting on Talbot Street West, such lands being to the north of and abutting 43 Mill Street West and 31.27 feet in width, legally described as part of Part 1 and part of Part 2 on Reference Plan 12R 25674, being part of Lot 4, Registered Plan 173, to 1849650 Ontario Limited for the purchase price of $11,257.20 to be consolidated with the lands known as 43 Mill Street. That the Director of Legal and Legislative Services be authorized to execute all documents required to complete the above noted transfer. Number 2, right of first refusal. Council authorized the granting of a right of first refusal to purchase the remaining vacant lands fronting on Talbot Street West, such lands to the north of 43 Mill Street West, legally described as Part 1 and Part 2, Reference Plan 12R 25674, being part of Lot 4, Registered Plan 173, to 1849650 Ontario Limited, such right to be exercised only in the event that the municipality declares the land surplus, and in the event of the exercise of such right, such lands to be consolidated with the consolidated lands known as 43 Mill Street West. The mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the grant of first refusal on the terms recommended in confidential report LLS 4618 and in a form satisfactory to the municipal solicitor. Number 3, easement. Council authorized the granting of an easement over an approximately 17-foot wide strip of lands to the west of the vacant lands fronting on Talbot Street West and the lands known as 43 Mill Street West, legally described as Part 1 on Reference Plan 12R 10666, being part of Lot 5, Registered Plan 173, to 1849650 Ontario Limited for the benefit of 43 Mill Street West, and the southerly 40 feet of the vacant lands fronting on Talbot Street West to be transferred. The Director of Legal and Legislative Services be authorized to execute all documents required to complete the above noted grant of easement. Number 4, lease. Council authorize a lease of an approximate 17-foot wide strip of lands to the west of the vacant lands fronting on Talbot Street West and the lands known as 43 Mill Street West, legally described as Part 1 on Reference Plan 12R 10666, being part of Lot 5, Registered Plan 173, to 1849650 Ontario Limited for the purpose only as a patio to service the adjoining business. The mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the lease agreement with terms as recommended in confidential report LLS 4618 and in a form satisfactory to the municipality's solicitor. So you need a motion for that, and then I have a bit more.
So if the people at home have ever wondered why we spend so much time in closed session, that's all the legal mumbo jumbo you just heard. So moved by Councillor Jacobs, support by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried.
Just to finish that report, proper notice of the meeting was given and the meeting adjourned at 6:30 p.m.
All right, consideration of bylaws.
Bylaw 18-18 being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 890-09 as amended for the municipality of Leamington, which pertains to the subject land ZBA 158, 447 Bevel Line Road, Bevel Line Village Subdivision. That was with report PLA 1318 earlier. Bylaw 45-18 being a bylaw to temporarily delegate certain authority to the Chief Administrative Officer as amended, and that would include the amendments I referred to earlier, LLS 4118. Bylaw 47-18 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of the Municipality of Leamington at its meeting held July 9th, 2018.
Council's wishes. Moved by Councillor Dunn, support by Councillor Verbicki. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? Carried. There were no notices of motion circulated, so we're into open session for council and min. Councillor Wilkinson.
I got a few, Mayor Patterson, I hope you don't mind. First one, in regard to fish flies. I know we've been battling the fish flies in this town for 30 years. No, but I can remember a time when we didn't have fish flies. When I was a younger guy, like 12, 13 years old. I don't remember fish flies being in this town, but it seems like since I got my license, that's when it seemed to come.
So it's your fault.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, we've been dealing with this a lot of years, and I'm just wondering if we could have some sort of a strategy. We know that the fish flies are coming. When it comes to the cleanup, our south end, gets bombarded by it. And the south end is used by our guests, our tourists. A lot of our residents go to the south end to socialize, exercise, whatever. We know it's a hot spot. I'm just wondering, as senior leadership meets and we talk about ways to improve our community, during fish fly season, this is one where we know that the light standards are going to get crushed. Every day during about a 2-week period, there's going to be a massive pile of rotting fish flies underneath those light standards. When we walked to the Symphony there the other night, I met up with everybody leaving the marina, and it's like the March of Penguins going over to the Sea Cliff. And we're all walking down a little 12-inch space in between, where the fish flies aren't there. I spent a lot of time this weekend past Arts at the Marina, and that was how many times I heard that complaint, can we do anything about the fish flies? We should do something about the fish flies. I thought, why not suggest it, I don't know, I know Public Works is pressed badly. I know we'd probably have to take maybe them away from another area. We got a spectacular guy doing work downtown. I see him out there all the time. Maybe during that fish fly season, he shifts his efforts to another spot. I don't know, it's just a thought to get a vacuum truck out there and get those areas that we know are the hot spots cleaned up. I think it's something that would improve, the south end of our town that's used heavily by our guests, tourists, and residents. Something to consider. Next, I'm getting a lot of complaints. It seems like more. Speeding in the south end of town has always been a problem. And now that we got Erie Street closed down, that is shifting over to Robson Road more and down Cherry Lane. Again, at Arts at the Marina, those residents around that area, those complaints have gone up more than usual. And I'm hoping you two at your next police service board meeting will have that conversation with the OPP. I know it's been going on forever, but it seems like it's hitting more of a rampant need. It'd be so easy to, I think, to identify the times that they're needed there. It's often after dusk is when these people say it's dusk. The police aren't needed there, let's say, during the afternoons. They need to target these places and have a big presence around dusk, it seems like. So that's a plead from our South End residents, and if I see Jerry Rebel, I'll make sure I pass that on to him as well. And last is in regards to garbage in the uptown area. I think since we had, I think our efforts are showing improvement when it comes to the overflowing trash cans we have uptown. I don't see that like the way I used to. What I do see still, repeat offenders often, is the dumpsters. Those are consistently still being abused. I'm just wondering, again, a talk amongst senior leadership, is it maybe the thought that these people keep on abusing that, have no regard for the actions that we're taking to go and get it emptied ourselves? I'm just hoping that we could, target that more. It's very consistent, that abuse of the dumpsters, and it's so unsightly in our uptown, especially over the summer months. I think that's an area that needs to be concentrated on, but I think we are winning the battle when it comes to the garbage is collecting around our receptacles, at least in the uptown area. So I'm hoping that somebody would put some thought towards that.
Okay, thank you very much. I got Councillor Verbicki next.
Further, Mayor, I'm going to have to read mine because it's kind of important. On July the 16th, 2018, at 1 o'clock next Monday, Leamington Mercier Historical Society will be unveiling a plaque in the Mercier Park. This was the last battle ever fought on U.S. and Canadians, from the War of 1812. On July the 16th, 1814, 8 Kentucky soldiers were killed at roughly where the bridge is over Sturgeon Creek. Lieutenant Harrison and 8 other soldiers. A group then from Malden came days later and buried Harrison in one grave and the others in a common grave. The graves are approximately 1 kilometer from where we are going to put the plaque up. A group of Kentucky regiments will be here on hand to view the dedication. The grave is now on private property, but one person I found out does know where it is, so I just want to go and get the GPS, so maybe we have it on record too. So I hope to see you all there. It's next Monday at 1 o'clock, and it will be at Mercia Park. And apparently this is the last war that Canada and the U.S. have ever fought too, so it's and the last people that were ever killed on with the two. So it's a big deal. It's been 4 years in the making, and I really want to thank the municipality for the support. And I have talked to Ken, and Peter and I have visited the site where it's potentially going to go. So we got a week to put it up. So hopefully it all goes good, and we'll see you next Monday.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To add to Councillor Wilkinson's speeding issue, there's a huge one on Park Street as well. The kids are parking down in the parking lot. I had somebody send me a video last week. You should have seen the car fishtailing. You know how narrow that street is? Then a mom sent me something as well. She had a video too of somebody almost getting hit because of the increased speed. They just floor it, and it's such a narrow street between the corner and then where the detour sign is. So I forwarded them already, both to Jerry Ribble and to Stu, so I've sent those on. Anyway, I was going to ask for a business license report. Staff has been working with our businesses, and I just would like to know where we are in the process. And with that, I'm looking at numbers, registration numbers, and breakdown, perhaps, if that's possible. I'm looking for common complaints. I'm looking for positives and negatives from staff, what their uptake is on that. And then finally, if they think there are some possible changes that we should consider. I'm not looking for it next council meeting. I'm just looking for it in the relatively near future. We're still hearing complaints. I just think we had said in the discussions when we first talked about this that it would be a living document. So I think we're at a point where staff can give us some, maybe even give us some recommendations, or at least give us some insight into how things are being received and what their take is, and then we can perhaps move on it from there. And that's it.
Okay, good. Okay, go ahead. Mr. Neufeld, yep.
I'm sure that the mayor is going to talk about the visit from the Prime Minister, and I'm not going to steal your thunder, but that event came to us in very short notice, and there were some of our staff who were incredibly instrumental in bringing that together. And Brianna was one of them, and Kira and Andrea and Lindsay and Ken Brown and his public works staff, including Corey. Corey, who not only got the site ready, but then spent the next day carrying around cold bottles of water and delivering them to people who looked like they needed some. So I'm hoping I didn't leave anybody out, but I just think it's important when those things come to us and we turn to the people who make it happen. And I know since Brianna is sitting here, I wanted to at least take that opportunity to say thank you to Brianna and those people who put forward that extra effort to bring that to fruition.
Okay, really quickly from me then, June 28th, the Deputy Mayor and I were both guests at the LDSS graduation ceremonies once again. Always interesting to see where the kids are going to go. Those who are going into the workforce, those who are going off to college and university, and then the odd one that goes into the Canadian military. It's kind of cool to see all of that happen. On the 29th, we had the Mennonite Canada Day celebration. And I know Councillor Hammond was there, and Deputy Mayor, you must have been there because your mom's there. So I didn't see. I was kind of there and gone. But always a great event put on by our local community. The 29th, that evening, again, though, we were down at the amphitheater, and we welcomed the entire Windsor Symphony Orchestra to our amphitheater, and wow, what a performance for all of us that were able to get there. I have not heard anything bad about that, even for the people who've never probably sat in front of a symphony orchestra before. July 1st, obviously, Canada Day. We had a great band down there, or multiple bands, I guess, on the Saturday or that Sunday night, and followed by fireworks. Very, very well attended by people from everywhere again. And as our CIO mentioned, we just happened to have a little visit from somebody, kind of important, and that'd be our Prime Minister. And I think who Peter forgot to thank was himself, which I guess is kind of hard to do, but from the day that Sam Diab at Highbury called me to the few days that we had in between before the Prime Minister was coming, I know how much work our CAO put into working with the RCMP, the PMO's office, and everybody else. But again, to Brianna and to the other staff members that were there putting in countless hours as well, you guys did us proud. We made Leamington look good, and it was that was impressive. So bravo to everybody. And July 5th, the CIO and I met with Alberto from the Mexican consulate and a couple of businessmen. Again, it's getting kind of interesting to see how focused the central Mexico is on creating opportunities between Canada and Mexico. And it was quite an interesting presentation. There's more to come from this one. They're looking at doing a sort of I don't want to say seminar, but a gathering of some sort, workshop, I guess, of local suppliers, and so it could be beneficial both ways. But I just want to let you know that we had that meeting, and that's it for me. So if there's nothing else, then we'll go statements of members non-debatable. Anybody want to adjourn? Councillor Verbeke, Councillor Jacobs, all in favor? Carried.